Hello everyone. I know many of you are watching this video to fall asleep. Before you drift off, let me know in the comments what time you're watching and where you're from. Now, let's begin and relax together. Definition and origins. What déjà vu literally means and its etymology. There are moments in life when the ordinary bends, quietly, almost imperceptibly, and something uncanny steps into the room with us. A face we've never seen before feels strangely familiar. A sentence we hear for the first time seems to echo in our memory as though we've already rehearsed it. A corner we turn on a street in a city we've never visited before carries the weight of recognition, as though we had walked those stones in a dream or in a memory misplaced. These are moments when time appears to loop, when our mind insists, "I have been here before," even though reason whispers, "No, you have not." We call this sensation déjà vu, but before we rush to label it, let's pause together in that stillness. Stay with me until the end. This journey is less about explaining a trick of the mind and more about uncovering how words, history, and human imagination have tried to capture something so delicate and fleeting. Like a shadow that only appears in certain light, déjà vu dissolves when you try too hard to grasp it. But if we move slowly, gently, we can trace its outlines and perhaps see why humanity has always been so fascinated with this peculiar folding of experience. Think of the last time it happened to you. Maybe you were sipping coffee with a friend, and suddenly the angle of their smile, the rhythm of the music in the background, the warmth of sunlight through the window, all of it fell into place as if you had lived that very second before. It's disorienting and comforting at once, like slipping into a story you already know but can't quite place on the bookshelf of your memory. That strange doubleness, the here and now tied to the not quite remembered, is the essence of the feeling. And yet, for much of human history, we didn't have a single, precise word for it. It lingered unnamed, experienced but elusive. People spoke of dreams, of prophecy, of the soul remembering another lifetime. Cultures gave it different shades of meaning, but it wasn't until the late 19th century that someone pinned the butterfly with a word, déjà vu. But before we speak that name aloud in its fullness, let's reflect on what words themselves do. Words are like vessels on a river. They carry our fragile experiences from one shore to another, making them shareable. Without words, our most private sensations would remain locked inside, ineffable, evaporating like mist. To give something a name is to make it part of our shared human fabric, to transform the solitary into the collective. So what is the name of this strange doubling of time? Déjà vu, a French phrase meaning literally already seen. Simple, elegant, just two syllables in each word, carrying centuries of mystery on their shoulders. Déjà already, vu seen. Together, they encapsulate a paradox, something unfolding for the first time, yet felt as though it has unfolded before. The term was introduced by the French philosopher and researcher Émile Boirac in the year 1876. Boirac used it to describe the unsettling sensation of familiarity in the unfamiliar. Imagine the intellectual climate of that time. Europe was buzzing with new discoveries in psychology, the study of the subconscious, the first attempts to chart the hidden landscapes of the mind. Hypnosis, memory research, the early explorations of Freud and his contemporaries, all were swirling in the air. It was an age where language was being invented to catch up with phenomena that humans had always known but never precisely named. Boirac himself described déjà vu as a kind of illusion of memory, a fleeting trick that gave us the sensation of reliving the present. He gave it shape in writing, but the experience itself is ancient. We can imagine countless unnamed instances across centuries. Perhaps a traveler on the Silk Road pausing in a strange market, feeling a wash of familiarity as the scent of spices curled through the air. Or a philosopher in ancient Greece suddenly struck by the feeling that he had sat under that very olive tree before, speaking those very words. The absence of the word did not mean the absence of the experience. It simply drifted without anchor until French gave it a form. The French language, with its elegance and compactness, has a gift for distilling the ineffable. Think of joie de vivre, the joy of living, or a more proper, self-love. Déjà vu joins their company as one of those phrases so perfectly balanced, so precisely attuned, that it slips across languages intact, untranslated. English speakers could have chosen a clunky equivalent, previously seen, or pre-experienced, but those lack the poetry, the softness, the almost whispered tone of déjà vu. When we say it, we are not merely labeling an occurrence. We are invoking a mood, a mystery, an atmosphere. And notice how the word works not only as definition, but as mirror. To say déjà vu is itself to conjure the feeling of something already known. It is as if the phrase performs the very sensation it describes. Already seen. And already, the word seems familiar even the first time you learn it. That, perhaps, is its hidden genius. But déjà vu is not a monolith. It has cousins, variations, expansions. Psychologists and philosophers have noted states like déjà entendu, already heard, when a phrase, a melody, a voice feels known before its time, or déjà vécu, already lived, a deeper sense not just of sight, but of the whole lived moment repeating itself. Some even speak of jamais vu, never seen, the unsettling opposite, when the familiar suddenly feels strange, as if meeting it for the first time despite knowing it intimately. Together, these terms map the fragile terrain where memory, perception, and time blur together, revealing how fluid our sense of reality truly is. In culture, déjà vu has been given many robes to wear. In literature, it appears as a symbol of fate, destiny looping back upon itself. In dreams and spiritual traditions, it is sometimes seen as evidence of past lives, the soul whispering to us across incarnations. In modern films and stories, déjà vu often marks a fracture in reality. Think of The Matrix, where a repeated glimpse of a cat signals a glitch in the system. All of these interpretations, scientific or mystical, point to the same human hunger, to understand why the present sometimes feels like a memory. And perhaps that is why the word holds such power. It doesn't merely describe a neurological hiccup. It carries within it our longing to bridge time, to find continuity in the scattered fragments of experience. When we feel déjà vu, we are reminded that our lives are not just linear, moving forward like an arrow. Instead, they are layered, folded, braided. The past whispers into the present, and for a second, we hear it clearly. So when we say déjà vu, we are not just using a borrowed French phrase. We are naming the ghost of familiarity, the poetry of recurrence, the delicate shimmer of time folding back upon itself. Its etymology is simple, already seen, but its resonance is profound. It is a reminder that words are never just definitions. They are invitations. Invitations to reflect, to notice, to wonder. The next time you feel it, that flicker of recognition in the unfamiliar, pause. Instead of brushing it away, let it wash over you. Imagine yourself connected, for just a breath, to something larger than the moment. Perhaps it is your brain misfiring, memory pathways crossing wires. Perhaps it is your soul remembering, or time rippling in ways science cannot yet chart. Or perhaps it is simply what it has always been, déjà vu, the already seen, offering you a glimpse of life's hidden poetry. And as you sit with that thought, remember that the word itself has traveled a long road to reach you. Born in the mind of a French philosopher, shaped by centuries of unnamed wonder, carried across languages, it now rests on your tongue. A phrase both ordinary and extraordinary. A phrase that makes the fleeting eternal, if only for a heartbeat. So linger in it. Let the sensation remind you that even the most mysterious corners of the human mind can be given shape, that our lives are woven not just of events, but of echoes, patterns, repetitions. And when déjà vu comes again, and it will, may you greet it not with confusion, but with recognition. After all, you have already seen it. Historical accounts, famous cases of déjà vu throughout history. There are moments in life when the present feels strangely rehearsed. You walk into a room for the first time, and yet something deep inside insists you have stood in that doorway before. A conversation drifts across the table, and though it is new, it seems to echo from some hidden chamber of your memory. It is as if time is not a straight road, but a circle, and you have already walked this bend. We call these moments déjà vu, but the words come later. The sensation itself, mysterious, fleeting, and intimate, belongs to every age of humanity. Before psychologists attempted to chart it in laboratories, before philosophers gave it language, people across centuries encountered this trembling overlap of familiarity and strangeness. They recorded it in journals, in letters, in the margins of history. And what we find, when we trace these accounts, is not merely curiosity, but a mirror, an ancient recognition that our minds, our memories, and perhaps even our souls, are more mysterious than the ordinary world suggests. Stay with me until the end, and we'll walk together through these echoes, through the stories of poets, emperors, scientists, and ordinary travelers who felt déjà vu before the phrase was born. Their words, preserved across centuries, remind us that this sensation is not new, not modern, not confined to psychology textbooks. It is as old as wonder itself. Think first of St. Augustine, writing in the 4th century. In his Confessions, he reflects on memory with a reverence that borders on awe. He does not use the words déjà vu. Those would not exist for another 1500 years, but he describes moments where the soul encounters something familiar that it cannot place. He writes of memory as a vast palace with hidden rooms, where recognition comes without clear origin. To Augustine, such moments hinted at the divine, the idea that the soul carried fragments of eternity, surfacing in flashes of recognition within earthly life. Centuries later, in the 17th and 18th centuries, as Europe entered the Age of Enlightenment, philosophers wrestled with memory in new ways. John Locke, the English thinker, spoke of memory as the thread that holds personal identity together. What, then, of memories that feel real but cannot be placed in experience? Locke did not give us a specific case of déjà vu, but his explorations open the door. When we feel that uncanny familiarity, are we touching a real memory misplaced, or something else entirely, an illusion of the self? But let us move closer to more personal accounts, the ones that feel like stories told by candlelight. In the early 19th century, a French soldier and writer named Charles Dickens, yes, the novelist we know so well, wrote of a sensation eerily close to déjà vu. In his letters, and later in his autobiographical fragments, Dickens described traveling through Italy, walking along unfamiliar streets, only to feel that he had lived the moment already. He wrote of a dreamlike repetition of place and time, as though his life were doubled. Dickens, ever a storyteller, did not try to explain it away with science. He embraced its mystery, folding it into the fabric of his imagination, where dreams and reality often touched. And Dickens was not alone. In the 19th century, poets and travelers often wrote of these uncanny repetitions. The Romantic movement, with its emphasis on memory, dreams, and the sublime, found in déjà vu a kind of proof that life was stranger than reason allowed. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, the poet of Kubla Khan, spoke of experiences that felt remembered before they were lived, as if the imagination itself reached forward in time to meet him. Though he did not coin the term, he touched its edges, describing the dreamlike sensation with the same hushed awe he reserved for visions of paradise. It was also in this century that more systematic accounts began to appear. Émile Boirac, the French philosopher, famously gave us the word déjà vu in 1876. But before he named it, others had described it in medical journals, in philosophical treatises, and in private diaries. One of the earliest recorded cases comes from the psychologist F. L. Arnault, who described a patient experiencing constant déjà vu, so persistent that it colored every moment of his life. For this man, reality was haunted by repetition. Every face, every conversation, every step seemed already taken. His case puzzled doctors and philosophers alike, blurring the boundary between neurology and metaphysics. What is striking, as we move through these historical accounts, is the diversity of interpretation. For some, déjà vu was evidence of the soul's pre-existence, a whisper of past lives resurfacing in the present. Plato, long before the word existed, suggested that learning itself was a kind of remembering, the soul recalling truths it had known before birth. What is déjà vu, then, if not a fleeting glimpse of that deeper memory? For others, it was a trick of the brain, a glitch in the machinery of perception. By the late 19th century, Scientists such as Wigan and Bernard Leroy suggested that déjà vu might arise when the brain processes information twice, slightly out of sync, an echo of perception mistaken for memory. These early theories laid the groundwork for modern psychology, but even then, the scientific explanations could not quite touch the poetry of the experience. Consider also the cultural echoes. In Japan, accounts of déjà vu often intertwined with the idea of reincarnation and karmic cycles, moments of recognition seen as hints of spiritual continuity. In India, too, déjà vu was often interpreted as evidence that the soul carries traces of many lifetimes, a reminder that what feels new may simply be a return. Across cultures, the sensation invited a deeper question. Is life singular and linear, or cyclical and layered? Now let us pause at the heart of this reflection, the insight that ties all these accounts together. Déjà vu is not just a quirk of memory. It is a reminder that human beings have always experienced the tension between what we can explain and what we cannot. Each historical account, from Augustine to Dickens to Boyrac, is a testimony to the same truth. When the familiar arises in the unfamiliar, we are confronted with the mystery of being alive. And this is why déjà vu has fascinated both scientists and poets. It sits at the crossroads of the measurable and the ineffable. A neurologist may map the brain pathways that misfire to create the sensation, while a mystic may see it as a glimpse of eternity. But both are responding to the same shimmer, the same fleeting doubling of reality. After this realization, the stories multiply. In the 20th century, writers like T.S. Eliot played with the sensation in poetry, suggesting that time itself might fold upon itself. Time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future. Philosophers like Henri Bergson explored the phenomenon as evidence of consciousness stretching beyond the immediate moment. Even soldiers in war recorded instances of déjà vu, writing in their journals that the horror of a battlefield felt eerily foreseen, as if fate had already carved it in memory. And beyond the famous names, there are the countless anonymous voices, letters tucked away in archives, diaries forgotten in drawers, conversations overheard. A Victorian woman writing to her sister in 1856 confesses that she felt she had lived an entire evening twice. A traveler in colonial India writes in his journal that a village felt uncannily known to him, though he had never been there before. These fragments remind us that déjà vu is not the possession of the famous alone. It belongs to everyone. It is a universal thread in the fabric of experience. And so we arrive here, in the present, with all these stories behind us. From saints to soldiers, from philosophers to poets, déjà vu has left its fingerprints across history. Each account adds another layer to our understanding, not by explaining the sensation away, but by showing how deeply it has resonated with human beings across time. What are we to make of this? Perhaps that déjà vu is a mirror, showing us how fragile and fluid our sense of memory truly is. Or perhaps it is a window, opening onto something larger, something that transcends the ordinary flow of time. Whatever we choose to believe, its history tells us this. The sensation is part of being human, and it connects us across centuries. So the next time you feel it, that sudden doubling of a moment, that whisper of familiarity in the unfamiliar, remember that you are not alone. You are standing in the company of Augustine, of Dickens, of countless unnamed travelers who felt the same tremor and wondered. You are part of a long lineage of humans marveling at the strangeness of their own minds. And when the feeling fades, as it always does, let it leave you not with unease, but with wonder. For in that brief flicker, you have touched the same mystery that has haunted poets, puzzled scientists, and comforted seekers for thousands of years. Déjà vu is not just an experience of the present, it is a conversation across history. So linger with it. Let it remind you that life is not just a sequence of moments, but a tapestry of echoes, repetitions, and patterns. And when déjà vu comes again, and it will, may you recognize it not as an interruption, but as a gentle reminder of how vast and layered our experience of time truly is. After all, as history shows us, we have always felt it before. Psychological explanations, how the mind interprets familiarity. When the present bends back upon itself and carries the strange fragrance of memory. You're walking along a street in a city you've never visited, and suddenly you feel as if the walls, the angles, the rhythm of footsteps have been here with you before. You're listening to a friend speak, and the words that leave their mouth, though never heard until this instant, echo as though you rehearsed them in another life. These are moments when time is doubled, when the now becomes strangely haunted by the sense of again. It is easy to brush this aside, to say, "How odd," and let the sensation dissolve. But if you pause, if you hold the moment gently in your attention, you might begin to notice how extraordinary it really is. Déjà vu is not simply an oddity of perception. It is a window into the machinery of the mind, a reminder that our sense of reality is stitched together by threads both delicate and unseen. Stay with me until the end, and together we will wander through this strange terrain. Not only the fleeting feeling of déjà vu itself, but the deeper landscape of familiarity, how the mind interprets it, how memory shapes it, and how psychology has tried to explain the ways in which our world sometimes feels already known. To begin, let us linger on the everyday. Think of the comfort of slipping on a well-worn sweater. The threads remember the shape of your body. Your hand finds the pocket without thinking. Familiarity is not only recognition, it is ease, safety, belonging. To feel something as familiar is to let down your guard. It is why we return to certain songs when the world feels overwhelming, why we crave the taste of a meal from childhood, why we return home and breathe more deeply the moment we cross the threshold. But familiarity can also surprise us. Imagine walking into a room for the first time and feeling that instant of déjà vu. It is familiarity without cause, recognition without source. The brain, ever efficient, is built to recognize patterns, to say, "I have seen this before, and here is how to respond." But sometimes, that system misfires. A spark of recognition leaps up where no memory exists, and we are left in wonder. Psychologists have long tried to understand this. One explanation suggests that déjà vu arises from a temporary hiccup between two processes, recognition and recollection. Recognition is fast, automatic. It is the flicker that says, "This feels known." Recollection is slower, deliberate. It digs for the memory, the context, the when and where. In déjà vu, recognition surges, but recollection fails. The result is a moment that feels both deeply familiar and strangely unplaceable. Picture it like a song playing on the radio. Recognition is the instant you say, "I know this melody." Recollection is when you remember, "Ah, it's from that summer years ago, driving with the windows down." Déjà vu is the moment when you recognize the tune, but cannot find the memory that belongs to it. You hum along to a ghost. The mind, however, is not a simple machine. It is layered, textured, full of shortcuts and improvisations. Another psychological theory suggests that déjà vu may occur when sensory information takes slightly different routes in the brain. Imagine you are walking into a room. The image of the room enters your visual system, traveling along pathways to the brain. If one pathway lags just slightly, the second arrival may feel like a repeat of the first, creating the illusion that you have already seen it. Two signals, staggered, become one strange doubling of time. Think of it like lightning and thunder. You see the flash, and then a moment later you hear the boom. In déjà vu, you experience the flash of familiarity twice, once faintly, once more fully, so close together that the brain mistakes it for memory. Still others suggest that déjà vu may be linked to how the brain stores and retrieves memory fragments. The hippocampus, deep in the temporal lobe, acts as a kind of librarian of experience. Most of the time it files moments neatly, placing them in context. This face belongs to yesterday's cafe, or this voice belongs to my old teacher. But sometimes a fragment slips loose, a gesture, a tone, an arrangement of shadows, and the brain lights up with recognition without context. It is like finding a page torn from a book without knowing which story it belongs to. You know it, but you do not know from where. Let us pause here, at the heart of the matter, where psychology touches mystery. Familiarity is one of the most powerful feelings the mind produces. It shapes not only our memory, but our identity. To feel that something is familiar is to feel that we belong to it, that it is part of the fabric of our life. It is recognition without threat. It is homecoming. But déjà vu is a fracture in that system. It reveals, for just a moment, that familiarity can be produced without belonging, without memory. The mind, in its efficiency, gives us the sensation of, I know this, even when we cannot. And in that gap, we glimpse something profound. That reality itself is constructed not just from what is, but from what the mind believes it has seen before. In other words, déjà vu shows us the architecture of the mind at work. It peels back the curtain, however briefly, and lets us see the gears turning. The split-second dance between recognition and recollection, between fragment and whole. From here, we can wander outward, into the variations of familiarity. Psychologists have identified not only déjà vu but also jamais vu, the uncanny opposite, when something deeply familiar suddenly feels alien, as if stripped of recognition. A word repeated aloud until it dissolves into nonsense. A loved one's face that, for a split second, seems unmoored from memory. These are reminders that the mind's sense of familiarity is fragile, and that what feels stable can shift beneath us. Then there is presque vu, the almost seen, often described as the tip of the tongue phenomenon, when you know something but cannot bring it fully into awareness. These cousins of déjà vu remind us that memory is not a perfect recording device. It is a living, breathing process, fluid, fallible, creative. Consider also how culture shapes our interpretations. In some traditions, déjà vu is seen not as a cognitive glitch, but as evidence of past lives, as the soul remembering what the body cannot. In literature and art, it becomes a symbol of fate, of destiny repeating itself. In neuroscience labs, it becomes a tool for studying how memory fragments are encoded and retrieved. In each lens, the phenomenon is the same, but the meaning shifts. Familiarity becomes either sacred, poetic, or scientific, depending on the story we choose to tell about it. And in our daily lives, we see echoes of this everywhere. Think of relationships. Meeting someone new who feels instantly familiar, as if you've known them forever. Science might explain it as recognition of patterns, a similarity to someone from your past, a resonance in voice or gesture. But in the moment, it feels like destiny, like threads tied long before. Or think of returning to a place after many years, where the walls remember you even if you do not remember them. The familiarity surges, and with it, a sense of being held by time itself. Even in small moments, the psychology of familiarity shapes us. We buy the same brand of cereal because it feels safe. We trust a stranger more if their face resembles someone we already know. We return to favorite movies not for surprise, but for recognition, for the comfort of lines and scenes that already belong to us. The brain, in its wisdom, seeks familiarity as a compass for safety, trust, and belonging. And so, when déjà vu arrives, when familiarity appears without origin, it unsettles us. It is as if the compass points north and south at once. We are reminded that our minds are not flawless recorders, but interpreters, storytellers, constantly weaving fragments into the fabric of the known. Déjà vu is the seam where the stitching shows. As we draw this reflection to a close, let us hold the paradox gently. Psychology gives us explanations, recognition without recollection, misfired pathways, memory fragments out of place. These are helpful, grounding, and true in their own ways. But explanations do not erase the poetry of the experience. They simply add another layer. Because to feel déjà vu is to feel the delicate power of the mind itself, the way it can fold time, blur boundaries, and make the present shimmer with the ghost of memory. It is a reminder that reality is not just what lies outside us, but what the mind constructs within. So the next time it happens, when a street feels lived before, when a word feels rehearsed, when the present carries the weight of repetition, pause. Let it be not only a puzzle, but a wonder. See it as psychology, yes, but also as poetry, as evidence that to be human is to live inside a mind that can make the world feel known, even when it is new. And when the feeling fades, as it always does, carry this thought with you. That familiarity is not merely recognition, but connection. It is how we weave ourselves into life, how we turn the chaos of sensation into belonging. Déjà vu, in its fleeting strangeness, is simply the reminder that the mind is both scientist and storyteller, architect and dreamer. After all, what is more human than to see something for the first time and feel, with quiet wonder, that we have already been here before? Neurological basis: brain regions involved in déjà vu experiences. There are moments in life when the world pauses, not in silence, not in stillness, but in an uncanny doubling of experience. You find yourself in the middle of an ordinary moment, walking into a room, shaking someone's hand, hearing the cadence of a sentence, and suddenly, you are struck by the sensation that you have lived this before. The walls, the voices, the tilt of light through the window, it all rushes toward you with the weight of memory. Yet you know, rationally, that this cannot be so. This is déjà vu, a whisper of recognition in the unfamiliar, a folding of time, an echo without source. For centuries, people have tried to make sense of this fleeting sensation. Philosophers called it a proof of memory's mysteries. Poets called it a dream breaking into daylight. Mystics called it a message from beyond, a glimpse of past lives, a ripple in fate. But today, we can also walk another path of understanding, the path of the brain itself. Neuroscience, with its careful instruments and luminous scans, has allowed us to peer inside the architecture of memory. And what we find is not the undoing of déjà vu's mystery, but rather the deepening of it. The more we learn, the more we see how intricate the mind is, how extraordinary our inner world has always been. So stay with me until the end. Together, we will wander through the labyrinth of the brain, visiting the regions that flicker with familiarity, the circuits that weave recognition and recollection, the delicate electrical storms that sometimes give rise to déjà vu. And along the way, we will ask what it means, not only scientifically, but humanly, to experience the already seen. Let us begin with a simple truth. The brain is a storyteller. Every moment of your life, it gathers sensations, patterns, fragments, and weaves them into the narrative you call reality. It is not a camera, recording with cold accuracy, but a painter, filling in gaps, smoothing edges, coloring memories with feeling. To feel something as familiar is to accept the brain's whisper. This belongs to your story. But sometimes, the storyteller stumbles. Sometimes the brush slips, and the brain paints a scene twice, once as perception, once as memory. That slip is what we call déjà vu. And to understand why it happens, we must look closely at the regions of the brain responsible for memory and recognition. At the heart of this story lies the temporal lobe, the great archivist of experience. Tucked deep within each hemisphere of the brain, the temporal lobes hold the machinery of memory, especially the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure curled beneath the surface. The hippocampus is the gatekeeper of memory, deciding what experiences are filed away for long-term storage and what is allowed to fade. When you feel déjà vu, scientists believe the hippocampus is at play, flickering between recognition and confusion. Imagine walking into a library. The hippocampus is like the librarian, guiding you to the right shelf, retrieving the right book. But in déjà vu, it hands you a book with no title page. You recognize the words, the sentences feel known, but you cannot remember ever reading the story before. Close to the hippocampus lies another region, the parahippocampal gyrus, which helps us recognize the context of a scene. It answers questions like, have I been in this room before? Do I know this street? When this region misfires, the brain may mistakenly tag a new experience as familiar, even though it has never been encountered. And then there is the amygdala, the almond-shaped guardian of emotion. When familiarity arises, it is not a cold recognition, it is suffused with feeling. That warm rush of, I know this, that strange blend of comfort and unease. That is the amygdala's signature. Without it, familiarity would be flat, mechanical. With it, déjà vu carries the weight of mystery. But perhaps the most intriguing connection lies in the realm of neural timing. The brain is a symphony of electrical rhythms. When those rhythms slip out of sync, when one signal arrives a fraction of a second before another, the brain may interpret the same perception twice. That duplication can be misread as memory. Two glimpses of the present become one illusion of the past. This is why déjà vu is often linked to epilepsy, particularly temporal lobe epilepsy. Patients who experience seizures in these regions sometimes report intense, repeated déjà vu, sometimes as a warning before a seizure begins. It is as if the electrical storm in the brain forces the machinery of familiarity into overdrive. From these cases, scientists have learned much about the neurological basis of déjà vu, tracing it not to mysticism, but to the extraordinary fragility of memory itself. And yet, science does not strip away the wonder. It adds layers to it. For what is more astonishing than to realize that a slip of timing, a flicker of neurons, can transform the ordinary into the uncanny? That the brain, in its attempt to anchor us to reality, sometimes reveals how fragile reality truly is? Think of it like a theater. Normally, the curtain rises once, and the play unfolds. But in déjà vu, the curtain lifts twice. The second time, you already know the stage, the lines, the gestures, even though you have never seen them before. The illusion is seamless, persuasive, unforgettable. History is filled with attempts to explain this sensation. Ancient philosophers like Plato imagined memory as a form of eternal recollection, the soul remembering truths it had known before birth. Mystics spoke of reincarnation, the soul revisiting places it had once walked. Today, neuroscience offers another kind of poetry, the idea that memory is not a vault, but a living process, vulnerable to echoes and overlaps. Déjà vu, in this view, is not a glimpse of eternity, but a glimpse of the brain constructing reality in real time. But does that make it any less profound? I would argue no. To know that our inner world is so finely tuned that a millisecond's delay can open a door into mystery, that is no less awe-inspiring than the idea of past lives. Both remind us that human experience is far stranger than we often admit. And beyond the laboratory, we see echoes of this in everyday life. Consider a conversation with someone you've just met. Their gesture, the tilt of their voice, stirs a sense of recognition. Perhaps it resembles someone from your past, a friend long gone. The brain retrieves a fragment, matches it imperfectly, and delivers the feeling of déjà vu. In relationships, this can feel like destiny. I've known you forever. But beneath it lies the delicate machinery of recognition, memory fragments, and emotional resonance. Or think of travel. You stand in a plaza in a foreign city, the stones beneath your feet older than nations, and you feel that you have stood here before. Perhaps you saw a photograph once, or perhaps the geometry of arches and streets echoes another place you've been. The brain stitches fragments together, and the scene becomes both strange and familiar. You breathe it in, half believing you've returned to a place you've never been. Even in dreams, we feel this doubling. A dream may leave behind fragments, unconscious sketches, that surface later in waking life. When reality resembles the dream, déjà vu blooms. The brain, recognizing the echo, insists, "You have been here before." The deeper we look, the more we realize that familiarity itself is the cornerstone of survival. It tells us where we are safe, where we belong, what faces we can trust. To misfire in this system, then, is not just a curiosity. It is a reminder of how deeply our sense of self depends on memory. Without familiarity, every day would be alien. With too much false familiarity, we would live in a hall of mirrors. Déjà vu is the balance tipping, briefly, between those two extremes. As we draw this reflection to a close, let us return to the sensation itself, the moment of déjà vu. It lasts only seconds. It cannot be forced. It fades almost as soon as it arrives. And yet, in its brevity, it leaves a trace, like a footprint in wet sand. Neuroscience tells us it comes from the temporal lobe, from the hippocampus, from tiny delays in the brain's timing. Psychology tells us it is recognition without recollection. Philosophy tells us it is a glimpse of eternity. Culture tells us it is the whisper of past lives. Perhaps all are true in their own way. Perhaps déjà vu is not meant to be solved, but savored, as one savors a mystery in a poem or a fleeting note of music. It reminds us that we are creatures of memory, living not only in the present, but in the echoes of what has been and the shadows of what might come. So the next time it happens, when the room tilts familiar, when the air hums with repetition, pause. Let it wash over you, neither fearing nor dismissing it. Remember that what you are feeling is the brain itself, revealing its inner symphony, its delicate dance of memory and recognition. And when it passes, as it always does, carry with you this thought that the most ordinary moments of life, walking into a room, hearing a friend's laughter, standing in the sun, are extraordinary because within them lies the possibility of wonder. Déjà vu is simply the brain's way of reminding us that reality is never as simple as it seems, that we are more than perceivers. We are dreamers, interpreters, storytellers. And every so often, the story loops, just enough to let us feel that we have already seen the page we are now turning. After all, in a way, perhaps we have. Memory glitches, the role of short-term versus long-term memory. There are moments when the mind feels like a trickster. You reach for a word that dances just out of reach. You walk into a room and forget why you entered. You mistake a stranger's face for someone you once knew. Or perhaps most uncanny of all, you find yourself certain that you have lived a moment before, a flash of familiarity without a past to hold it. We trust memory more than we realize. It is the foundation upon which we build our sense of self, the thread that ties together yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And yet, memory is not a flawless archive. It is not a perfect library where every book is neatly cataloged and preserved. Instead, it is more like a living river, flowing, bending, changing course. At times, it carries us smoothly. At other times, it stumbles, and we are caught in its eddies, wondering what is real, what is imagined, what belongs to now, and what belongs to before. Tonight, let us walk into that river. Let us explore the strange boundary between short-term and long-term memory, and how, in their fragile conversation, the phenomenon of déjà vu emerges. Stay with me until the end, because this is not simply about science. It is also about the delicate, profoundly human experience of remembering and forgetting, the fabric from which our stories are woven. Think of memory as having two wings. One wing holds the present moment, fluttering in real time, the wing of short-term memory. It is the space where we keep a phone number long enough to dial it, where we hold the first half of a sentence until we reach the end, where the immediate now is stored before it fades. This memory is brief, fragile, like a spark that glows for a few seconds before vanishing. The other wing is long-term memory, vast and enduring. It is where the important moments settle, where the story of your childhood, your first love, your hardest lessons, and your deepest joys are kept. This memory can last for years, for decades, for a lifetime. It is not infinite, but it is expansive, like a great library stretching beyond sight. Between these two wings lies a delicate passageway. Psychologists sometimes call it consolidation, the process by which fleeting moments in short-term memory are encoded into the long-term storehouse. Without this process, nothing would remain. Your day would dissolve as quickly as it arrived. Every morning would be a rebirth, with no yesterday to guide you. And yet, this passageway is not perfect. Sometimes, signals falter. Sometimes, the present slips too quickly into the wrong file, or the same experience is stamped twice. Once as something new, once as something remembered. These are memory glitches, and among them, déjà vu is perhaps the most poetic. Imagine it like this. You walk into a cafe for the first time. The air smells of roasted beans. A song plays faintly in the background. You see the barista smile, and you lift your hand to wave. In reality, this is all new. And yet, in the brain, something misfires. The scene, still unfolding in your short-term memory, is mistakenly processed as though it already belongs to the long-term archive. Recognition sparks where it should not, and you feel the uncanny certainty. I have been here before. It is as if the brain's filing clerk stamped the same moment twice, once into the ledger of the present, once into the archive of the past. In that instant, you are caught between wings, suspended between now and memory. This brings us to the heart of the matter. Déjà vu may not be the glimpse of past lives that mystics once believed, nor a message from fate. Instead, many neuroscientists and psychologists believe it is a timing error, a slip between short-term and long-term memory. The brain, moving at unimaginable speed, sometimes misroutes experience. And when it does, the ordinary is dressed in the robes of the already lived. Picture a movie projector. Normally, the film runs smoothly, frame by frame, creating the illusion of continuous motion. But if two frames overlap, if the reel slips, the picture on the screen doubles. For a heartbeat, it looks like you are seeing something you've seen before. This is the nature of a memory glitch, two frames of time, overlapping, becoming one. But to leave it at that, to explain it merely as a neurological hiccup, would be to miss the deeper wonder. Because what does it tell us? That we can mistake the present for the past. That the very machinery that anchors us in time can stumble, and in stumbling, reveal its fragility? It tells us that memory is not a static thing. It is living, breathing, improvising. It tells us that identity, the self we cling to as solid, is woven from threads that can fray, tangle, or knot unexpectedly. It tells us that even the simplest moment, walking into a cafe, hearing a sentence, can become uncanny when the rhythm of memory falters. To see this more clearly, let us step into everyday life. Have you ever repeated a story to a friend, forgetting you had already told it? In that moment, your long-term memory has not flagged the event as already spoken, and your short-term memory does not intervene. Or perhaps you've walked into a room only to forget what you came for. This is not failure, but the delicate nature of short-term memory revealing itself. It can hold only so much before it empties. Or think of the strange comfort of nostalgia. A song comes on the radio, and suddenly you are 16 again, the air thick with summers that no longer exist. This is long-term memory in its most vivid form, but even then, it is not perfect. The song is true, but the memory is colored, reshaped, softened by time. It is less an archive than a painting, brushed with the hues of longing. And then, of course, there are the moments of déjà vu, where the short-term and the long-term collide, where now becomes memory and memory becomes now. The glitch is brief, but it lingers. It reminds us of the strangeness of consciousness itself. History, too, has been fascinated with this interplay. Ancient philosophers spoke of memory as a wax tablet, impressions pressed upon the surface. When the wax was warm, impressions could blur, overlap, or fade. Modern science refines the metaphor but does not erase it. We now know that memories are not stored whole, like books on a shelf. They are reconstructed each time we recall them, pieced together from fragments scattered across the brain. To remember is to rebuild. And in the rebuilding, errors, glitches, inevitably arise. In relationships, these glitches carry even deeper weight. Two people may remember the same moment differently. A first kiss, a parting word, an argument. One holds it as sharp and painful, the other, softened or forgotten. Which memory is true? Perhaps neither. Perhaps both. Memory is not a mirror but a canvas, and every canvas is painted differently. When we step back, we begin to see that déjà vu and memory glitches in general are not failures of the mind, but windows into its mystery. They show us that the brain is not a machine but a storyteller. A storyteller that sometimes repeats a line, sometimes forgets a verse, sometimes tells the ending before the beginning. And yet, from these imperfections, the story of self is woven. Science explains it in terms of short-term and long-term memory, of consolidation, of neural timing. But the experience itself, the feeling of the uncanny, is something beyond measurement. It is human. It is the flicker of awareness that we are creatures moving through time, building reality moment by moment, trusting a system that is beautiful, but not flawless. As we reach the end of this reflection, let us pause once more in the mystery. Memory is the fabric of identity, and yet it is full of holes. We live not in a perfect record, but in a patchwork quilt, stitched together by moments we choose to keep, moments that slip away, and moments that are stamped twice. So the next time you feel déjà vu, when a moment arrives clothed in familiarity, do not rush to dismiss it. Do not label it merely a glitch. Instead, see it as a reminder. A reminder that memory is not something we have, but something we are. That to be human is to live in the tension between short-term and long-term, between fleeting sparks and enduring stories. And when the glitch fades, as it always does, let yourself be grateful for the memories that hold you, for the moments that surprise you, for the mystery that lies between. For in the end, memory is not meant to be flawless. It is meant to be alive. And in its living, it will sometimes falter, sometimes repeat, sometimes confuse, but always, always, it will remind us that we are beings who remember, beings who dream, beings who carry both past and present in the fragile miracle of a single mind. Temporal lobe seizures, connection between epilepsy and déjà vu. There are moments in life when reality itself trembles, not in the violent way of earthquakes or storms, but in a subtler, more intimate way, like the quiet ripple across the surface of a pond or the flicker of a candle flame when no wind is present. It is the sensation that time has shifted, that the ordinary has become unfamiliar, or paradoxically, too familiar. Déjà vu. Most of us have felt it at least once. The eerie conviction that we are reliving a moment, though we know we cannot be. A trick of the mind, we say, a curious quirk of memory. But for some, this sensation is not fleeting. For some, it is a warning sign, a herald of something deeper stirring in the brain. And so, tonight, let us walk together into a quieter, darker forest, the connection between déjà vu and the world of temporal lobe seizures. Stay with me until the end, because this is not only about neurology. It is also about fragility, resilience, and what it means to live within the shifting landscapes of the mind. To begin, we must remember that the brain is not a single voice, but a chorus. Billions of neurons, singing in patterns, keeping rhythm, weaving together perception, thought, memory, and self. When the rhythm is steady, the song feels seamless. But when the rhythm falters, when the chorus erupts in a sudden storm of dissonance, we call it a seizure. Epilepsy is the name we give to this condition of repeated seizures. And within epilepsy lies a particularly fascinating branch, temporal lobe epilepsy. The temporal lobes, nestled just above the ears, are gateways to memory, emotion, and recognition. They are where we store the stories of our lives, where we feel the pulse of music, where we sense the déjà vu of the ordinary becoming strange. It is here, in this region, that déjà vu finds a peculiar home. For while most people encounter it rarely and briefly, individuals with temporal lobe epilepsy may feel déjà vu as a recurring aura, a strange herald before the storm of a seizure. Think of an aura as the whisper of thunder before lightning strikes. For some with epilepsy, the aura is visual, flashes of light, shimmering patterns. For others, it is emotional, a sudden wave of fear or joy. And for many with temporal lobe epilepsy, it is déjà vu, a sudden and overwhelming conviction that the present has already happened. Imagine the weight of that. Not just once, not just occasionally, but repeatedly. This haunting familiarity arriving unbidden, wrapping ordinary moments in the uncanny. A classroom lesson, a conversation with a friend, the act of unlocking a door, all may become overlaid with the ghostly feeling of repetition. The French neurologist John Huglings Jackson, one of the earliest pioneers in the study of epilepsy in the 19th century, described these moments vividly. He wrote of patients who experienced dreamy states, moments where memory and perception overlapped, where reality itself seemed to double. Many of his patients described sensations we now recognize as déjà vu, or its cousin, jamais vu, the sudden strangeness of what should feel familiar. These accounts remind us that déjà vu, while often benign, can also be a window into the deeper currents of the brain. When neurons in the temporal lobe fire in synchrony, even without an external trigger, the result may be a false echo of memory. It is as though the brain briefly projects a slide from its archive over the present moment, blurring what is happening now with what it has stored before. This leads us to the heart of the matter. The connection between déjà vu and temporal lobe seizures reveals something essential, that the boundary between memory and perception is thin, delicate, and vulnerable to disruption. In the middle of a seizure, normal processing is hijacked. Neurons that should be signaling in measured harmony instead erupt in chaotic bursts. When this happens in the temporal lobe, where memory and familiarity reside, the brain may falsely register the present as remembered, even before the conscious mind can catch up. To the person experiencing it, the déjà vu is real. The conviction is powerful, and yet, it is a signal, a neural echo of something deeper unfolding. But pause for a moment. Do not imagine this only as a medical curiosity, an abstract phenomenon confined to textbooks. Instead, let us bring it closer. Think of the way you sometimes dream so vividly that you awaken uncertain whether it truly happened, or the way a song can suddenly collapse the years, placing you back in a moment long gone. The brain is always juggling past and present, weaving them together into one seamless experience. A temporal lobe seizure, in this sense, is not an alien intrusion, but an exaggeration of what the brain is already doing. It is the chorus gone too loud, the rhythm too strong, the memory too insistent. And so déjà vu, within epilepsy, becomes both symptom and metaphor, a reminder that our sense of reality is delicate, a construction held together by balance. History and culture have long woven seizures with mystery. In ancient times, epilepsy was sometimes called the sacred disease, believed to be a mark of divine touch. People who experienced it were thought to cross thresholds between worlds. Perhaps it is no surprise, then, that sensations like déjà vu, moments that blur the line between past and present, were part of that mystical interpretation. Yet science has shown us another truth. These experiences are not messages from beyond, but signals from within. They remind us that the brain, for all its power, is not infallible. It is a living organ, electrical and fragile, capable of brilliance and of error. And in that fragility lies both vulnerability and beauty. Consider relationships shaped by memory. If two people walk through a park, one may later describe it in vivid detail. The way the leaves shimmered in the sunlight, the sound of children playing in the distance. The other may remember only faintly or differently. Memory is already subjective, already a construction. Now imagine the added complexity of a brain that imposes déjà vu upon these moments, folding experience into the uncanny. For those living with temporal lobe epilepsy, this is not simply theory. It is life. Conversations, meals, daily tasks, all can carry the shadow of repetition, a feeling of strange recognition, even as the body prepares for a seizure. And yet, within this, there is resilience. Humans adapt. They learn to read the whispers of their own brains. Some use déjà vu as a warning sign, a signal to prepare, to rest, to seek safety. What is uncanny to one person becomes a survival tool to another. We can learn from this, not only about the science of the temporal lobe, but about the ways we all live with the fragility of memory and perception. Think about how often we take our sense of reality for granted, that what we see is what is there, that what we remember is true. And yet, déjà vu reminds us of the cracks in this assumption. Temporal lobe seizures remind us even more forcefully. They say, be gentle with certainty. Be humble with what you think you know, because the mind is both powerful and fallible. So what do we do with this knowledge? Perhaps, instead of fearing it, we can lean into it. The next time you feel déjà vu, pause. Breathe. Acknowledge the strangeness, but also the wonder. For a brief moment, you are standing in the doorway between past and present, between perception and memory. You are witnessing the brain's attempt to knit time together, and sometimes to misstitch it. And if you know someone who lives with epilepsy, let this reflection deepen your compassion. What may seem like a fleeting quirk to you may be, for them, a daily reality. Their déjà vu may not be mere curiosity, but the herald of a seizure. Their lives are lived with constant awareness of the fragility of the mind's rhythms. As we come to a close, let us return to where we began. The ripple on the pond, the flicker of the flame. Déjà vu is both ordinary and extraordinary. For most, it is a passing echo. For some, it is a profound signal of the brain's vulnerability. But for all of us, it is a reminder of the delicate threads that weave reality together. The temporal lobes, hidden behind the temples, hold the keys to memory, recognition, and identity. When their rhythms falter, the world itself can feel doubled, uncanny. And yet, in that very faltering, we glimpse the mystery of what it means to be human, fragile, resilient, endlessly curious about the workings of our own minds. So let us walk away tonight not with fear, but with reverence. Reverence for the brain, for its power and its imperfections. Reverence for those who live with epilepsy, who navigate déjà vu not as passing strangeness, but as part of daily life. And reverence, too, for the quiet truth that reality, as we know it, is always stitched together by memory, always vulnerable to the smallest glitch, always more mysterious than we imagine. And perhaps, the next time you feel déjà vu wash over you, you will remember this. It is not just a glitch, but a window into the living, trembling miracle of the human mind. Dreams and déjà vu. How dreams may trigger familiarity in waking life. There are moments in life when reality tilts, subtly, quietly, like a curtain caught in the wind. You walk into a room you've never been in before. You hear someone speak a sentence you swear you have heard already. You glance out a window, and suddenly the way the light falls, the angle of the street, the sound in the distance, it all feels as though it has already happened. And yet, it hasn't. Not in waking life, at least. This is the paradox of déjà vu, the strange marriage between the known and the unknown, the new and the remembered, a riddle whispered in the folds of consciousness. But what if the source of that riddle is not only memory, not only the mechanics of the brain awake, but the landscapes we wander when we sleep? What if déjà vu is, in some quiet way, a dream echoing back into daylight? Tonight, let us linger here together. Let us follow the thread that connects dreams to déjà vu, the possibility that the strange familiarity of waking life may, at least sometimes, be born in the theater of sleep. Stay with me until the end, because this is not only a story about science and psychology. It is a story about imagination, about mystery, and about the secret architecture of the human mind. Dreams are perhaps the oldest companions of human wonder. Long before science, long before neurology, dreams were seen as messages from the divine, as whispers from ancestors, as omens, visions, and prophecies. Ancient cultures built entire belief systems around the dream world. Temples in Greece once welcomed those seeking healing through dream incubation, lying down on sacred stones, waiting for the gods to visit them in sleep. Even today, in a world lit by technology, dreams remain mysterious. They arrive unbidden, unfolding in surreal scenes that vanish the moment we wake. Some are vivid, etched into memory like paintings. Others dissolve before we can even grasp their outlines, leaving behind only a feeling, a residue of emotion. And yet, no matter their form, dreams leave their fingerprints on waking life. They color our moods, they spark our creativity, they carry unresolved fragments of thought and memory. And sometimes, perhaps, they prepare the stage for déjà vu. Imagine this. You dream of walking through a narrow hallway lined with blue doors. Each door is closed, and you feel both curious and unsettled. You wake, and you forget. The dream dissolves like mist at sunrise. Days later, you step into a hotel you have never visited before. And there it is, the same hallway, the same blue doors, the same odd sense of familiarity. Is it possible that what you feel as déjà vu is not a memory of the past, but a memory of a dream? The idea is not new. Some psychologists and philosophers have long entertained the possibility that dreams and déjà vu are intertwined. Sigmund Freud, though often controversial in his interpretations, once suggested that déjà vu might arise from repressed memories surfacing through dream imagery. Others, in more modern times, have speculated that dreams act as simulations, practice runs of possible futures. When waking life collides with a detail once rehearsed in a dream, the spark of déjà vu is ignited. Neuroscience offers a cautious perspective. Dreams are, in part, the brain's way of processing and reorganizing information, shuffling the deck of experiences, sorting memories, stitching fragments together in surreal patterns. It is not unlikely, then, that something encountered in waking life resembles a detail from a forgotten dream. And when the mind recognizes that resemblance, déjà vu blooms. Think of dreams as sketches, rough drafts of possibilities. A dream may place you in a city you have never visited, but which resembles pieces of every city you've known. The cafe you pass in the dream may have the awning of one you once saw in Paris, the tables of another from your hometown, the smell of coffee from your grandmother's kitchen. Later, when you visit a new cafe in real life, the collision of details may awaken that buried sketch. The dream whispers, "You have been here before." Déjà vu becomes, then, a bridge, a fleeting glimpse of the continuity between our sleeping and waking selves. The most important insight here is this. Déjà vu does not necessarily mean you have literally lived a moment before. Instead, it may mean you have imagined it before. Your brain rehearsed it in sleep without your awareness. What feels like repetition may, in truth, be recognition. The waking world brushing against the dream world, and the boundary between them momentarily dissolving. This does not lessen the wonder. In fact, it deepens it, for it reminds us that the mind is vast, weaving tapestries of experience both seen and unseen. Our lives are not only the moments we remember by daylight, but also the infinite variations rehearsed in dreams. Let us step back and consider how culture has wrestled with this connection. In some traditions, dreams that come true are called prophetic. The Bible speaks of Joseph interpreting Pharaoh's dreams as visions of the future. Indigenous communities often treat dreams as guidance from spirits, as pathways to wisdom. While science might call this coincidence or subconscious pattern recognition, the feeling of déjà vu can echo these ancient beliefs. It feels prophetic, uncanny, as though we are walking a path already laid down. Writers and artists have captured this mystery as well. Jorge Luis Borges, in his labyrinthine stories, often blurred the lines between dream and waking life. Carl Jung spoke of dreams as doorways to the collective unconscious, where symbols are shared across humanity. When we feel déjà vu, perhaps we are brushing against that collective tapestry, the sense that our dreams are not private islands, but part of a greater sea of imagination. Consider relationships shaped by dreams. You may dream of a friend you haven't seen in years, only to bump into them the next day. Coincidence, perhaps. But when that coincidence comes wrapped in déjà vu, it feels like fate, like the world itself has rehearsed your meeting in secret. Or think of lovers who dream of one another before they meet, later recognizing each other in waking life with an uncanny sense of inevitability. Science might explain it as selective memory. We notice when dreams align with reality and forget the countless dreams that don't. But emotionally, experientially, it feels like déjà vu, a familiarity that transcends explanation. Everyday life, too, is touched by this weaving of dream and déjà vu. The street corner that feels familiar, though you have never stood there before. The stranger whose face seems oddly known, though you cannot place them. The office building whose corridors awaken an echo, though you've only just stepped inside. In each case, a forgotten dream may be at work, its fragments resurfacing in daylight, gifting you that strange familiarity. In this way, déjà vu becomes not just a neurological quirk, but a reminder that the dream world and waking world are not separate kingdoms. They are neighbors, sharing borders, sometimes trading whispers across the fence. And so, what do we do with this understanding? First, we can learn to listen. The next time déjà vu comes, instead of brushing it aside, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, could this moment be a dream remembered? Could it be the echo of something rehearsed in the silent hours of sleep? Second, we can honor our dreams. Keep a journal. Write down fragments, even if they seem meaningless. Over time, you may notice patterns, recurring places, faces, feelings. And when déjà vu arises, you may recognize it not as a glitch, but as the echo of a dream you once carried. Finally, we can allow ourselves to wonder, because even if science one day maps every neural pathway of déjà vu, the experience itself will remain poetic. It will remain a reminder that our perception of reality is layered, that life is not just what we see, but also what we imagine, what we dream, what we forget. As we close, let us return to the gentle truth at the heart of it all. Dreams are rehearsals, sketches, shadows. Waking life is the stage. And déjà vu is the moment when the two align, when the dream leans over into daylight and whispers, "You have been here before." Perhaps you haven't, not in body, but in spirit, in imagination, in the secret rehearsals of the mind. You have walked these halls, you have heard these words, you have stood in this place. So the next time déjà vu visits you, smile at it. Let it remind you that life is bigger than memory, wider than logic. It is a tapestry woven of both dreams and waking hours, both shadows and light. And perhaps, just perhaps, The dream is not gone at all. It is waiting here, folded into the moment, reminding you that the boundaries of reality are softer than you think. Precognition debate. Is déjà vu linked to seeing the future? There are moments in life when the fabric of time itself seems to ripple. You find yourself standing in a place you've never been, yet it feels uncannily familiar. You listen to a conversation, and as the words unfold, you realize you already knew what would be said, as though the future had rehearsed itself inside you. This is déjà vu, the eerie sensation of living something twice. But here is the question that lingers like a shadow behind the experience. Is déjà vu merely a trick of memory, or is it something more? Is it possible that déjà vu is not only the echo of the past, but also a faint glimpse of the future? Stay with me until the end, because this is not only a scientific exploration. It is also a meditation on time, destiny, and the edges of human perception. We live our lives bound by the rhythm of time. Past behind us, future ahead, present unfolding moment by moment. Yet déjà vu unsettles this neat order. It bends the arrow of time, leaving us with a haunting suspicion that we have stepped into a moment twice, once in memory, once in reality. Most explanations ground this in psychology or neurology. Memory misfires, processing delays, the brain tricking itself into recognizing something as familiar when it is not. But across history, there has been another interpretation, one that refuses to stay quiet. The idea that déjà vu is precognitive, that it is a subtle glimpse of what is yet to come. It is an idea both alluring and unsettling. If déjà vu is tied to precognition, then perhaps our minds are not sealed off from the future. Perhaps, in fleeting moments, we sense a destiny waiting for us. Imagine this scene. A young woman sits in a cafe she has never entered before. The sound of the coffee grinder hums in the background. Sunlight spills across the wooden floor, and a stranger opens a book at the table beside her. Suddenly, her breath catches. She has lived this moment before. Not yesterday, not last year, but somewhere outside the flow of waking time. She knows the page he is about to turn. She knows the laughter that will bubble from across the room. And when it happens, exactly as she expected, she shivers. Was this merely a coincidence of memory, or was it a quiet glimpse of the future, disguised as déjà vu? The debate between science and mystery is as old as human thought itself. On one side, researchers argue that déjà vu is nothing supernatural. It is the brain misinterpreting signals, or memories resurfacing in fragments, or the mind confusing dream imagery with waking life. To them, precognition is an illusion, comforting, perhaps, but not real. On the other side, throughout history and across cultures, countless people have reported déjà vu experiences that feel undeniably prophetic. Soldiers dreaming of battles before they occur, families sensing accidents before they unfold, ordinary people predicting small conversations, gestures, or places they have not yet encountered. The stories are so common, so persistent, that they invite us to wonder, could there be more here than science is ready to explain? The heart of the debate lies in this. Déjà vu feels like knowledge of the future because it collapses the boundary between before and after. When you are inside it, you do not only feel familiarity, you feel inevitability. You feel that the moment was always going to happen this way, and that some part of you already knew. This is the most important insight, resting at the center of our reflection. Déjà vu, whether or not it is truly precognitive, invites us into the experience of timelessness. It reminds us that our ordinary perception of past, present, and future may be only one lens among many. In déjà vu, time is not linear. It is circular, layered, echoing. It is as though life is a song we are both listening to and remembering, hearing each note twice, once in memory, once in real time. Whether that song comes from the brain's errors or from some mysterious thread of destiny is a question that remains unresolved. But the experience itself, the feeling of stepping outside linear time, is undeniable. Let us look to history. The philosopher Plato wrote of knowledge that feels innate, as though learning is a form of remembering. Could déjà vu be a cousin to this idea? Our recognition of something already imprinted in us, waiting to unfold? In the 19th century, as psychology blossomed, déjà vu was studied with both skepticism and wonder. Some saw it as a flaw in memory. Others entertained the possibility of foresight. Writers and poets leaned toward the mystical, treating déjà vu as a brush with fate. And in folklore around the world, déjà vu has often been linked to prophecy, a feeling that you are walking the path destiny carved for you, that the moment you are living was always waiting for you. Even in modern culture, we see the allure of this idea. Films like The Matrix use déjà vu as a symbol of glitches in reality. Stories of time travel, prophecy, and parallel worlds often hinge on the sensation of repeating moments. Artists, writers, and dreamers return to déjà vu again and again because it feels like evidence, however fleeting, that time is not as fixed as we believe. But let us return to the quieter, more personal side of it. Think of the conversations you've had where you knew what the other person was about to say. Think of the houses or streets that felt already walked. Think of the decisions you felt were already chosen before you made them. Was this the work of memory, coincidence, or something deeper? When two lovers meet and feel as though they've known each other forever, is it only psychology, or is it a kind of precognitive recognition, a knowing that they were meant to meet? When a mother senses her child's distress moments before the phone rings, is it chance, or is it a moment where déjà vu and precognition blur? These questions resist easy answers, and perhaps that is why déjà vu remains so haunting. It does not announce itself with clarity. It brushes against us like a breeze, and by the time we turn to catch it, it is gone. Science, of course, leans toward caution. No definitive evidence supports déjà vu as true precognition. Experiments attempting to prove foresight often falter under the weight of chance and probability. The mind is skilled at finding patterns, even when none exist. And yet, personal experiences remain. And for those who have felt déjà vu not only as familiarity, but as foresight, the certainty is unshakable. Here lies the paradox. Even if déjà vu is never proven to be precognitive, it will always feel that way. And in matters of human experience, feeling is often as powerful as proof. So where does this leave us? Perhaps déjà vu is not a literal vision of the future, but a symbolic one. Perhaps it reminds us that the future is not separate from us, but seated within us. That what is coming is, in some ways, already here. Déjà vu whispers that time may not be as rigid as our clocks suggest. It invites us to consider destiny, to wonder whether some moments are written before we arrive at them. And even if it is only a neurological trick, it still gives us that glimpse of timelessness, a reminder that our lives are layered with mystery. As we close, let us return to the quiet poetry of it. Déjà vu is a mirror, reflecting both what we know and what we long to know. It is a pause in the flow of life, where past and future fold into the present. It may be memory, it may be prophecy, or it may be something in between, something we do not yet have the language for. What matters is not the answer, but the wonder. The way déjà vu slows us down, invites us to look around, and whispers, "You are living something that matters. Pay attention." So the next time déjà vu finds you, instead of searching for proof, let yourself rest in the mystery. Whether it is a memory glitch, a dream echo, or a glimpse of the future, it is still a reminder that life is not ordinary. It is layered, enigmatic, and full of moments that ask us to wonder. And perhaps that is the truest kind of precognition, not the ability to see the future, but the ability to see the present more deeply, more vividly, more fully alive. Frequency and demographics. Who experiences déjà vu and how often? There are certain mysteries of the human mind that feel as if they belong to everyone, like stars in the night sky, visible to all, yet understood by none. Déjà vu is one of them. That sudden flicker of recognition in an unfamiliar place. The uncanny sensation that the moment before you has already unfolded, word for word, gesture for gesture. It is universal enough to unite us, yet curious enough to divide us in our explanations. We argue about its causes, we debate about its meanings, but beneath those theories lies a quieter, simpler question, one that is not asked often enough. Who among us feels déjà vu most intensely? Who encounters it again and again, as though life itself keeps replaying in strange repetitions, and who, by contrast, drifts through the years with only the faintest brush of this odd familiarity. Stay with me until the end, because this is not only about numbers and studies. It is about patterns of life, about age and memory, about the hidden ways experience touches some of us more than others. It is about you and me, and the peculiar frequency with which the universe chooses to whisper to us through déjà vu. Think for a moment about music. Some songs are so familiar, we recognize them after a single note. Others require half the melody before we nod and say, "Yes, I know this one." Memory works in much the same way. But déjà vu is not a melody we consciously choose. It is one that rises unbidden, an echo that appears without warning. And yet, not everyone hears that echo with the same regularity. Studies across psychology and neuroscience tell us this. Déjà vu is far more common in youth and young adulthood than in later years. Teenagers and people in their 20s report it most frequently, sometimes monthly, even weekly. By middle age, it becomes rarer. And by the time one reaches old age, déjà vu may visit only as a faint and infrequent guest. Isn't that remarkable? That this sensation, so mysterious, so tied to questions of memory and perception, also follows the arc of life, appearing most vividly when our minds are sharpest, our days most exploratory, and our sense of possibility most alive. Here lies the heart of our reflection. The frequency of déjà vu is not random. It is patterned, woven into age, lifestyle, and perhaps even personality. Youth is a season of newness, new places, new faces, new challenges. The brain is constantly mapping the unfamiliar. And in that constant flood of novelty, déjà vu thrives. In middle and older adulthood, life grows more routine. Patterns stabilize, environments repeat. We travel less, we experiment less, and perhaps the brain has fewer opportunities to misfire in that particular way. Déjà vu becomes a rarity, a faint echo of youth's constant wonder. This is the most important insight, the point around which everything else revolves. Déjà vu, in its frequency, is a mirror of how we live. It is more than a neurological hiccup. It is tied to exploration, to learning, to openness. It flourishes when we are stepping into the unknown, and it fades when life narrows into the familiar. Imagine a student traveling abroad for the first time. Each street corner is alive with strangeness, each sound and smell fresh and unfamiliar. And then, there it is, that eerie déjà vu, as though the journey had already been lived in some shadow life. Now picture an elderly man walking the same route he has taken for 40 years. The path is etched in his bones. Every building, every tree, every neighbor's face is known. For him, déjà vu is less likely, not because his mind is broken, but because the opportunities for that peculiar misfiring of memory are fewer. In this way, déjà vu is not only a quirk of the brain, it is also a reflection of the richness and variety of our days. But the story does not end with age alone. Researchers have found that déjà vu seems more frequent among people who travel widely, who read often, who expose themselves to novelty and change. It also appears more in those with higher levels of education, perhaps because their minds are constantly sifting, connecting, recognizing patterns. There are demographic ripples, too. Men and women report it at roughly equal rates, though the language they use to describe it may differ. Some cultures frame it as prophecy, others as memory, still others as a glitch in perception. And then there are those who rarely, if ever, feel déjà vu. For them, the phenomenon is more rumor than reality. They hear others speak of it, but cannot quite grasp its sensation. Like colorblindness, it is an absence not easily imagined by those who do not share it. Think about how this mirrors life itself. Some of us are haunted by patterns, repetitions, and echoes, while others stride forward as though every step is always new. Some are tuned to hear the faintest resonance of familiarity, while others are attuned only to the surface of the present. Neither way is better. They are simply different modes of experiencing the strange fabric of time. Let us pause for a moment and turn the lens inward. How often do you feel déjà vu? Do you remember your first time? Do you notice it arriving more frequently when you are traveling, learning, or stepping into uncertainty? And do you notice its absence during long seasons of routine? In reflecting on these questions, déjà vu becomes more than a curiosity. It becomes a compass. It can tell us whether our lives are expanding or contracting, whether we are still encountering the unknown, or whether we are settled into grooves of the familiar. History, too, hints at this pattern. Writers and philosophers from centuries past often noted déjà vu most vividly in their younger years, when journeys, studies, and encounters were fresh. As they aged, their reflections on déjà vu became rarer, as though the phenomenon itself had grown distant. Even in literature, we see the metaphor of déjà vu tied to youth, to the age of discovery, to the restless years when the mind is alive with connections. The older characters rarely speak of it, except in nostalgic tones. And what about the frequency of déjà vu across a lifetime? Surveys suggest that up to 70% of people will experience it at least once, but the true intensity varies. For some, it is a rare flicker once every few years. For others, it is almost weekly, a constant reminder that the present moment has strange shadows trailing behind it. In fact, there is a curious link between frequent déjà vu and certain conditions, like temporal lobe epilepsy, where déjà vu sometimes precedes seizures. But even outside of illness, high-frequency déjà vu is often found in those whose minds are restless, vivid, perhaps more prone to noticing patterns and echoes. So what can we take from all this? Perhaps déjà vu is not only a neurological event, but also a reflection of how alive we are to the world. To feel it often may mean you are immersed in novelty, exploration, and learning. To feel it rarely may mean your life is shaped by routine and stability. Both are human, both are valid, but they tell different stories about how time and memory are woven into our days. Déjà vu is democratic. It visits across gender, culture, and geography, but it is not evenly distributed. It is the companion of youth, of travelers, of learners, of restless spirits. It fades in age not because we lose our capacity for wonder, but because we lose the opportunities to walk through the unknown. As we close, let us return to the poetry of it. Déjà vu is like rain. For some, it falls often, soft and persistent. For others, it is rare, a sudden storm that vanishes as quickly as it arrives. Its frequency tells us something, not about fate, perhaps, but about the landscapes we walk through in life. If you find yourself often in déjà vu, it may be a sign that your mind is alive with possibility, mapping new terrain. If you rarely encounter it, perhaps it means you have built a life of steadiness and familiar ground. Either way, the phenomenon reminds us that memory and time are never simple. They ripple, overlap, and sometimes confuse us. They remind us that the mind is not a flawless machine, but a living, breathing mystery. So the next time déjà vu visits you, pause. Notice how often it comes. Notice what stage of life you are in. Notice what your days are filled with. For déjà vu is not only a mirror of the brain, it is a mirror of the journey you are on. And whether it comes to you often or rarely, it still carries the same whisper, that life is more mysterious than we can ever fully understand, and that every moment, familiar or not, is precious. Age and development, déjà vu in children versus adults. There are certain mysteries of the human mind that do not belong to one age or one stage of life, but instead travel with us, changing shape as we grow. Déjà vu is one of them. That strange flicker of familiarity, that haunting sense that what is happening now has happened before. It does not arrive to every person in the same way, nor at the same time of life. It is, instead, a phenomenon that evolves with us, following the contours of childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and age, shifting its frequency and its meaning as the years unfold. Tonight, or today, whenever you listen, I want to invite you into that journey. Stay with me until the end, and together we will walk slowly through the arc of life, watching how déjà vu first arrives like a faint visitor in childhood, grows strong and insistent in youth, steadies in adulthood, and eventually fades into the soft twilight of later years. It is not only a story of memory, it is a story of development, of how the mind grows, learns, and changes. Let us begin at the beginning. Children, especially very young ones, live in a world that is still being built. Every sound is novel, every object a mystery, every face a learning. The brain at this stage is busy wiring itself, weaving together neural pathways, laying down foundations of memory. And in this stage, déjà vu is rare. Studies suggest that children below the age of 6 seldom report experiencing it at all. Why? Because déjà vu relies on the machinery of memory, on the delicate dance between short-term impressions and long-term storage. A child's memory system is still under construction, still learning how to sort, store, and retrieve. Think of it like a library that is just being filled. The shelves are half empty, the cataloging system still crude. To experience déjà vu is to mistake one book for another, to believe that what you are reading now has already been read. But in a child's library, there are too few books, too few cross-references for that illusion to take place. It is in middle childhood and adolescence. Then, that déjà vu begins to emerge. Around the ages of 8 to 10, children first start reporting it. By the teenage years, déjà vu blooms into regularity, sometimes appearing monthly, even weekly. Why adolescence? Because this is the time when memory systems are growing sophisticated, when the hippocampus, the brain's hub for memory consolidation, is working at full force. The catalog of life is filling quickly. Every day, teenagers are immersed in new experiences, new schools, new friendships, new places, new challenges. And the more novelty the brain encounters, the more chances there are for déjà vu to slip through the cracks. It is almost poetic, isn't it, that the same season of life when everything feels dramatic and uncanny, when emotions run deep and experiences feel larger than life, is also the season when déjà vu is most insistent. As if the brain itself is echoing that sense of being caught between worlds, between childhood and adulthood, between innocence and maturity, between what has been lived and what is yet to come. Now let us pause here at the midpoint of the story, the most important insight of all. Déjà vu, in its rise and fall across age, is not only a trick of memory. It is a mirror of development. It emerges when the machinery of memory is strong and active, when the brain is rich in new experiences, when learning is at its peak. It fades when routines grow steady, when the pace of novelty slows, when memory itself grows quieter with age. To put it simply, déjà vu thrives in the seasons of growth. It is a byproduct of the mind stretching itself, storing more than it can perfectly manage. And that is why children rarely feel it, teenagers often do, and older adults less so. From here, the journey carries us into adulthood. In our 20s and 30s, déjà vu is still strong. For many, it peaks during this time: college years, young careers, travel, exploration, relationships. These are the decades of change and expansion, of moving away from home, of stepping into the unknown. Each step into novelty is an opportunity for memory to misfire, for the mind to whisper, "You have lived this before." But as adulthood continues, something shifts. By the 40s and 50s, déjà vu declines. Responsibilities stabilize. The novelty of daily life lessens. We drive the same roads, work in familiar spaces, return to the same homes. The library of memory is vast now, but the new entries are fewer, the repetition stronger. And so, déjà vu becomes rarer, not gone, but softened. And in later life, in the 70s, 80s, beyond, déjà vu may vanish almost completely. The elderly often report that they cannot remember the last time they felt it. The reasons are many: changes in brain structure, a slowing of memory function, fewer novel experiences, but the effect is the same. The echo of familiarity quiets, leaving the present moment bare and unadorned. But let us not mistake rarity for absence of meaning. When a child experiences déjà vu, it is bewildering, sometimes even frightening. For them, time is still new, and the illusion of repetition feels almost magical. For adolescents, déjà vu may feel like proof that life has deeper layers, that there is something uncanny in existence itself. For adults, déjà vu often carries nostalgia, a softer curiosity, a recognition that the mind is stranger than we imagine. And for the elderly, when it does occur, it can be profoundly moving, a rare reminder of the complexity of memory, a flicker of youth's mysteries returning for a moment. In each stage of life, déjà vu wears a different face. It is not one phenomenon, but many, changing with us as we grow. Think, for example, of a child walking through a forest for the first time. Every tree is a wonder, every bird a miracle. Déjà vu is unlikely here because everything is too new. Now imagine a teenager walking through the same forest. Perhaps they have been here before, perhaps not. But when the light falls a certain way, when the path bends just so, a flicker of déjà vu appears. And now picture an older adult, walking through that same forest decades later. The trees are familiar, the paths worn, the novelty gone. Déjà vu is less likely here, not because the mind is broken, but because the unknown has become known. There are stories, too, from history and culture. Ancient philosophers wrote of déjà vu as a sign of reincarnation or prophecy, but they often spoke of it through the eyes of the young, the apprentice, the wanderer, the seeker, rarely through the eyes of the aged. Literature, too, often places déjà vu in the hearts of youthful characters, those still learning the world, still discovering themselves. Even in our own lives, when we remember déjà vu most vividly, it is often tied to adolescence or early adulthood. Those years are marked by freshness, by intensity, by first times. And déjà vu, as if echoing the spirit of those years, is at its strongest then. So what can we learn from this? Perhaps déjà vu is not only a neurological quirk, but also a developmental marker. It tells us where we are in life's arc. It whispers of the brain's growth in youth, its flourishing in adulthood, its quieting in age. To notice when and how often we feel déjà vu is to notice the seasons of our own development. It is to recognize that the mind itself is changing and that its illusions shift with us. As we close, let us return to the poetry of it. Déjà vu is like a shadow that walks beside us. In childhood, it is faint, almost absent, as though the sun is too bright for shadows to appear. In adolescence, the shadow grows sharp and strong, following us closely. In adulthood, it softens, still present but less insistent. And in old age, the shadow fades into the dusk, leaving only the present moment. To feel déjà vu is to glimpse not only the mystery of memory, but also the story of growth. It is to realize that the mind itself has stages, that what feels uncanny at one age may be absent at another. So the next time déjà vu visits you, pause. Notice not only the sensation itself, but the age you are in, the stage of life you occupy. For déjà vu is not timeless. It is bound to your journey, woven into your growth, a reminder that memory and time are alive, shifting, evolving, just as you are. And whether you are a child just beginning to feel it, an adult still encountering it often, or an elder remembering it from afar, déjà vu carries the same gift, a reminder that life is layered, mysterious, and fleetingly familiar. Stress and fatigue, how mental states affect its occurrence. There are days when life feels heavy, days when your mind is stretched thin, when the hours blur into one another, and when even familiar moments carry a strange, distorted glow. We all know this state, when exhaustion lingers in the body, when stress hums like a low, restless current in the background. It is in these moments, when we are most weary, most unguarded, that déjà vu often chooses to appear. That uncanny flicker of familiarity, sudden, disorienting, unforgettable. It is as if the mind, overwhelmed by its own weight, slips for a moment between layers of time. A simple conversation, a glance at a street corner, the sound of a door closing, ordinary fragments of life, suddenly feel doubled, repeated, as though the world has looped back upon itself. Tonight, or whenever you choose to listen, I invite you to journey with me into this mystery. Stay with me until the end, and together we will explore how our inner states, our stress, our fatigue, our mental burdens, may shape the way déjà vu arises, not as an accident, but as a mirror, reflecting back to us the hidden pressures of our lives. Let us begin not with science, but with experience. Imagine this: you have been awake too long, perhaps studying for an exam, or staying late at work, or caring for someone through the night. The hours stretch into dawn, and your eyes feel heavy. Yet the world around you begins to take on a strange sharpness. Colors seem brighter, sounds seem closer, and then, without warning, a moment strikes you with a peculiar familiarity. You feel certain you have lived it before. Or think of stress. Those days when your mind is juggling too many worries, when deadlines and responsibilities pile up, when your body carries tension in the shoulders and the jaw. In such moments, when the mind is overloaded, déjà vu often slips in. It feels like the brain, tired of sorting through the chaos, suddenly folds reality in on itself. We often imagine déjà vu as a random glitch, a meaningless hiccup in consciousness. But what if it is also a signal? A subtle reminder of the state we are in, a whisper that our mind is stretched thin, that we are running on borrowed energy? Now let us step deeper into the science that underlies these impressions. At the heart of déjà vu lies the delicate relationship between memory and perception. The brain constantly compares the present to the past, searching for matches, cataloging familiarity. When stress or fatigue enters the picture, this system becomes more vulnerable to error. Stress floods the brain with cortisol and adrenaline, altering the activity of the hippocampus and temporal lobes, the very regions tied to memory and recognition. Fatigue, meanwhile, slows neural communication, weakens attention, and blurs the line between short-term and long-term memory. And here is the key insight, the turning point of our exploration. When the brain is strained by lack of rest, by worry, by emotional overload, it is more likely to misfire, to confuse the present with the past. Déjà vu may not simply be a quirk of memory, but a byproduct of mental strain. A reminder, hidden in plain sight, that the mind itself needs rest. This is why déjà vu often arrives late at night, during times of stress, or in seasons of life when responsibilities weigh heavily. The brain is less precise, more vulnerable to overlap. And in that overlap, the sensation of déjà vu is born. From here, let us widen our view. Throughout history, people have linked exhaustion with visions, with altered states of mind. Mystics, poets, and philosophers often described strange flashes of familiarity during long fasts, sleepless nights, or periods of deep contemplation. What science now frames as neural misfiring was once seen as spiritual crossing, a brush with the eternal. Even in daily life, we know how stress and fatigue warp perception. Time feels faster when we are overworked. Days feel longer when we are anxious. Dreams blur into waking life when we are sleep-deprived. And déjà vu, in its quiet way, belongs to this same family of distortions. It is the mind's fragile response to being pushed beyond its balance. Think of the student, buried in books the night before an exam, stumbling into the test room with bleary eyes, only to feel a sudden wave of déjà vu as the paper is placed before them. Or the parent, exhausted from sleepless nights with a newborn, standing in the kitchen and suddenly feeling they have lived this exact moment before. Or the worker, drained by endless stress, stepping into a meeting and being struck with that eerie doubling of time. These are not accidents. They are signals. Each déjà vu is like a gentle knock on the door of awareness, whispering, "You are tired. You are stretched. Rest." And yet, there is another layer. For even though stress and fatigue may increase the likelihood of déjà vu, they also deepen its resonance. When we are well-rested and calm, déjà vu may feel curious, even amusing. But when we are weary, it can feel profound, unsettling, almost mystical. The edges of reality blur, and the illusion seems stronger. Why? Because in exhaustion, the boundary between waking and dreaming weakens. The brain is more porous, more suggestible. And in that vulnerability, déjà vu feels not just like a trick of memory, but like a message from somewhere deeper. Let us pause and reflect here. What if we treated déjà vu not only as a curiosity of the brain, but as a kind of emotional barometer? What if, instead of brushing it aside, we listen to it as a signal? To notice déjà vu in a season of stress is to be reminded that we are pushing too hard. To notice it in times of fatigue is to realize that the body and mind crave rest. In this way, déjà vu becomes less of a glitch and more of a quiet teacher. A reminder that we are not machines, that our minds, like our bodies, have limits. Consider also the cultural echoes. Ancient traditions often linked altered states, brought on by sleeplessness, fasting, or stress, to visions, prophecies, and strange insights. In some sense, déjà vu belongs to this family. It is not mystical in itself, but it arrives when the mind is stretched thin, when we are closer to the edge of perception. And so cultures, lacking the language of neuroscience, often interpreted it as a glimpse of something beyond the ordinary. And perhaps they were not entirely wrong. For even if the cause is biological, the effect is deeply human. Déjà vu reminds us that our perception is fragile, that our experience of time is not fixed, that our minds can bend reality under pressure. As we near the end, let us bring the pieces together. Déjà vu is more than a memory glitch. It is a reflection of our inner state. It appears more often in youth and novelty, but also in seasons of stress and fatigue. It is a mirror held up to the mind, revealing when we are overloaded, when the brain is faltering under pressure. And so, the next time it comes to you, when you are tired or worried or stretched too thin, pause. Do not dismiss it. Instead, take it as a gentle signal, a moment to breathe, to slow down, to care for the mind that carries you through the world. For déjà vu, in its quiet way, is a reminder that we are human, that we are vulnerable to the pressures of life, and that even in our weariness, there is mystery. In the end, déjà vu is not simply about memory. It is about balance. It is about how the mind falters when strained, and how, in those falterings, we glimpse something uncanny. Stress and fatigue may invite it, but they also teach us through it. So as you drift now, into rest, into reflection, into whatever comes next, remember this. Déjà vu is not a flaw, but a sign. A reminder that the mind, like the body, needs gentleness, care, and pause. And in those moments of eerie familiarity, perhaps the message is simple: slow down. Rest. You are alive in a world that asks much of you, but you need not give it all at once. And with that, let the mystery settle. Carry it with you softly, like a shadow at the edge of thought. For déjà vu is not just about time repeating. It is about you and the delicate, beautiful limits of being human. Cultural interpretations. How different cultures view déjà vu. There are moments in life when we feel gently haunted. A cafe you've never visited before seems strangely familiar. A stranger's smile carries the weight of recognition. A narrow alley in a foreign city feels like a road you have walked in another lifetime. We call this sensation déjà vu, already seen. But the words, as clinical and French as they may sound, do not fully capture its richness. For every culture, across history, has tried to name and tame this strange doubling of time. Tonight, or whenever you choose to let these words find you, I invite you to lean back, to let your breathing soften, and to walk with me through the many ways humanity has tried to explain this phenomenon. If you stay until the end, you may discover that déjà vu is not only about memory and the brain, but also about how different cultures hold their mysteries. Each interpretation, whether spiritual, scientific, or symbolic, is a window into how we make sense of the unexplainable. Let us begin at the universal level. When something uncanny happens, the human heart rarely stays silent. We ask, what does this mean? Why does this feel the way it does? For some, déjà vu is a glitch, a hiccup in the brain's memory system. For others, it is a sign, a message, perhaps even a glimpse into another layer of existence. The truth is that culture is the lens through which we interpret the unknown. The same sensation, the shiver of familiarity, will be explained differently depending on whether one grows up in the mountains of Nepal, the deserts of North Africa, or the glass cities of the modern West. In this way, déjà vu is not simply a psychological event. It is also a cultural story. In many Western traditions, especially since the 19th century, déjà vu has been studied as a matter of science. French psychologists first gave it a name, déjà vu, and framed it as an error in memory. The West, fascinated with rational explanation, has tended to interpret it through the language of neurology and psychology. It became a phenomenon to be measured, studied, and dissected. But step outside this frame, and other interpretations unfold. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, déjà vu is sometimes linked with the doctrine of samsara, the cycle of birth and rebirth. That strange familiarity of a place you have never been may be explained as a remnant from a past life. The memory is not from this lifetime, but from another, carried like a faint echo across incarnations. To feel déjà vu, in this view, is to brush against the thin veil between lives. Among indigenous cultures, interpretations vary but often carry a sense of interconnectedness. For some, déjà vu may be seen as a message from ancestors, a sign that the living are brushing against the wisdom of those who came before. Time is not linear in many of these worldviews. It spirals, circles, weaves. And so déjà vu is not a mistake, but a reminder that past and present live side by side. Perhaps the most fascinating layer comes when we realize that cultures often project their deepest values onto the experience. In societies that prize rationality, déjà vu becomes a malfunction. In spiritual cultures, it becomes a sign of the eternal. In communities that emphasize ancestry, it becomes a message from those who walked before. Déjà vu is, in a sense, a mirror that reflects not only the individual mind, but the worldview of the society that interprets it. This is the heart of our journey. Déjà vu is not only a psychological puzzle, it is also a cultural Rorschach test, absorbing the colors of each tradition, carrying meanings far beyond the neurological spark that may trigger it. Let us walk more slowly now, through some specific interpretations. In the Middle East, some traditions describe déjà vu as a moment when the soul briefly remembers its time in the spiritual realm before birth. In Islam, this connects to the idea that the soul existed before the body. To experience déjà vu, then, is to recall a glimpse of that pre-worldly knowledge, a fleeting memory of a place where all souls once gathered. In Japan, déjà vu can sometimes be folded into the concept of yugen, a sense of mysterious profundity, of something felt but unseen. To the Japanese aesthetic sensibility, déjà vu is not a glitch to be explained away, but a deepened moment where ordinary life is tinged with mystery. In Western Africa, certain cultures interpret déjà vu as a crossing of timelines, where one's spirit briefly walks ahead or alongside itself, peering into paths yet to be taken. Here, déjà vu is not about the past at all, but about the future. It is a signpost, a whisper of what lies ahead. And in the modern West, where science and spirituality often coexist uneasily, déjà vu is often described as both a neurological misfire, yes, but also a strangely profound event. People may laugh it off in conversation, but deep down, many still feel its pull, wondering if it really is just the brain misfiring, or if perhaps, just perhaps, there is more to it. Consider how different these interpretations feel. To see déjà vu as a brain glitch is to treat it lightly, almost dismissively. To see it as a memory from a past life is to treat it reverently, as a brush with eternity. To see it as a message from ancestors is to treat it communally, as part of one's bond with lineage. Each meaning shapes the way the experience is carried. Each meaning tells us as much about culture as about consciousness. And isn't that true of all mysteries? We explain them with the stories we already carry. We project onto them our deepest beliefs about time, life, and the soul. Let us pause and weave in some everyday imagery. Think of a traveler walking through an unfamiliar village, pausing before a temple they have never entered, and suddenly feeling a wave of recognition. In the West, they may shrug and call it déjà vu, a strange brain quirk. In India, they may feel awe, believing they have walked this path in a previous life. In another culture, they may take it as a sign that they were meant to be there, that their journey has aligned with something larger. The sensation is the same, the explanation is different, and in this difference lies the poetry of human culture. History, too, carries traces of these views. The ancient Greeks spoke of anamnesis, the idea that learning is not acquiring new knowledge but remembering what the soul already knows. Plato suggested that truth lives within us, and what we call discovery is simply recollection. How easily déjà vu fits into this vision. A fleeting taste of knowledge we once carried, resurfacing in the present. In the 19th century, as Western psychology blossomed, déjà vu was stripped of its mystical clothing and reimagined as a subject for laboratories and studies. The French philosopher Émile Boirac first gave it the name déjà vu, and since then it has become the scientific term of choice. Yet even here, mystery lingers. Scientists can describe the neural processes, but the subjective feeling, the deep eeriness of déjà vu, remains beyond the reach of equations. And so we return, full circle, to the reflection that began our journey. Déjà vu is not only about neurons firing, nor only about past lives or ancestral whispers. It is about the human attempt to find meaning in the uncanny. It is about how cultures, in their diversity, weave stories around the strange and unexplainable. When you next feel it, that sudden doubling of time, that flicker of recognition in an unfamiliar place, pause. Ask yourself, what story does my culture tell about this? And what story do I, personally, want to believe? Perhaps it is a brain glitch. Perhaps it is a past life. Perhaps it is a message from something greater. Or perhaps it is all of these at once. A scientific process carrying spiritual resonance, a neurological spark dressed in the poetry of culture. As we close, let us rest with this thought. Déjà vu is both universal and deeply personal. Every culture has met it. Every individual has felt it. And every explanation, whether spiritual, scientific, or ancestral, is a way of holding the mystery, of making it bearable, beautiful, meaningful. So the next time déjà vu finds you, whether in the middle of a busy street or in the quiet of your own room, do not rush past it. Let it be what it is, a reminder that life is layered, that time is not as simple as we think, and that across all cultures, across all centuries, humans have always paused at this same threshold of strangeness. And in that pause, we are connected, not only to ourselves, but to every culture, every tradition, every person who has ever whispered, "I have been here before." Déjà vu versus déjà seni, subtypes of the phenomenon. There are moments in life when time feels as though it stumbles, when reality itself folds in on its edges, and you, just for a heartbeat, cannot tell if you are living something for the first time or simply remembering it. We often call this déjà vu, the feeling of the already seen. But beneath this umbrella lies a more intricate web of experience, subtler shades of familiarity, different notes in the same haunting song. Tonight, I want to invite you to wander with me through this landscape. Not in haste, not with urgency, but slowly, gently, like a walk through a half-remembered dream. If you stay until the end, perhaps you'll discover that déjà vu is not one single thing, but a family of sensations, each with its own flavor. And in learning to notice these shades, déjà vu and déjà seni, you may come to understand not only how the mind works, but how human beings have always struggled to name the ineffable. Let us begin at the most universal place, the feeling itself. Imagine this. You are sitting at a cafe, a warm cup of coffee before you. The waiter walks past, and you hear the faint sound of music drifting from the street outside. Suddenly, a wave of familiarity sweeps over you. Not only do you feel you have been here before, but you can anticipate what comes next, the clatter of dishes, the conversation at the table nearby, even the way the sunlight will strike the glass. This is not simply a passing recognition. It is immersive, total, like being swept into a river that insists you have swum these waters already. This is déjà vu, the already lived. Now contrast this with another moment. You are walking home one evening, tired but content. You pass a tree, hear a laugh, feel the cool brush of wind against your cheek, and there it is, a sudden shimmer of familiarity. But unlike the immersive prediction of déjà vu, this sensation is lighter, more fragile. It is a feeling, not a memory. A ghost of recognition, without detail. It lingers for a second, then fades, like a half-whispered secret. This is déjà senti, the already felt. Two experiences, both strange, both uncanny, but subtly, profoundly different. One feels like living again. The other feels like sensing again. The distinction matters, though at first glance it may seem unnecessary. Why divide déjà vu into categories? Isn't it enough to say we sometimes feel a strange familiarity? But human beings have always sought precision when standing before mystery. Naming is a way of both honoring and understanding. To give something a name is to admit it exists, to place it within the shared vocabulary of human experience. Just as the Inuit have many words for snow, and the Japanese language has a word, kamaribi, for the sunlight filtering through trees, so too do scholars of memory and mind seek finer terms for the many flavors of déjà vu. And so we have déjà vécu and déjà seni, one deeply tied to memory, the other to sensation. Here, in the middle of our journey, we arrive at the heart of the insight. Déjà vécu is the illusion of reliving an event, while déjà senti is the fleeting recognition of a feeling without context. Scientists and philosophers alike have tried to map these experiences. Déjà vécu is often studied as a temporal lobe phenomenon, where memory systems misfire, giving the brain the impression that the present has already unfolded. It feels narrative, as though the story of this moment has already been written. Déjà seni, however, has less to do with narrative memory and more to do with the delicate emotional textures of consciousness. It does not tell a story, it brushes an atmosphere. One is immersive, the other is elusive. To make this clearer, let us return to the canvas of everyday life. Think of déjà vécu as standing inside a film you have already seen, knowing the next line before it is spoken. Think of déjà seni as catching a faint fragrance in the air, a fragrance you recognize but cannot place. One fills the entire stage of the mind, the other flickers like candlelight at the edge of perception. For example, a student sitting in a classroom might suddenly feel déjà vécu. I've sat in this chair before, heard this lecture before, and I even know what the professor is about to say. It is unsettling because it feels like time has looped. By contrast, that same student walking down a hallway later may feel déjà seni, a strange recognition in the way the corridor light hits the walls, without memory, without storyline, just the faint tug of, I know this somehow. History and literature also give us glimpses of these distinctions, though they were not always named as such. The French philosopher Émile Boirac first described déjà vu in the late 19th century, but it was later thinkers and clinicians who began distinguishing between subtypes. Patients with temporal lobe epilepsy, for instance, often reported déjà vécu in vivid detail, describing entire moments of life as repetitions, sometimes with uncanny confidence that they could predict the future. Meanwhile, more ordinary, everyday experiences tended to resemble déjà seni, the light brush of familiarity without depth or content. This division mirrors life itself. Some of our experiences are heavy and narrative, stories we tell, events we remember. Others are light and fleeting, moods, atmospheres, impressions that pass like shadows. In this way, déjà vécu and déjà seni are not only psychological curiosities. They are mirrors of how life itself comes to us, sometimes as story, sometimes as sensation. Culture, too, plays a role in how we interpret these shades. In some traditions, déjà vécu might be seen as evidence of reincarnation, the memory of a past life echoing into the present. Déjà seni, on the other hand, might be described as a moment of spiritual resonance, a feeling that the soul recognizes without needing narrative proof. And in our modern, scientific culture, the division helps researchers design experiments, gather data, and probe the architecture of memory. Yet even here, the poetry remains. Even if we call it a neural misfire, the subjective richness of these moments cannot be reduced to electricity in the brain. They are lived mysteries, delicate folds in time that resist simple explanation. As we move toward closing, let us reflect on what these subtypes teach us, not only about déjà vu, but about living itself. Déjà vécu reminds us that life is often experienced as story. We crave narrative, continuity, the sense that events unfold in sequence and can be remembered. When this system falters, we feel as though the story has already been told. Déjà seni, however, reminds us of another layer, the life of moods, atmospheres, emotions that cannot be pinned to events. Sometimes we live not in story, but in texture, not in memory, but in feeling. To distinguish these is not to fragment the mystery, but to deepen it. To notice these shades is to pay attention, to become more intimate with the delicate workings of the mind. So the next time you feel that shimmer of recognition, ask yourself, is this déjà vécu, the already lived? Or déjà seni, the already felt? Is this the ghost of a memory, or the ghost of a mood? Perhaps it is both. Perhaps it is neither. But pausing to notice, to name, is itself an act of wonder. And so we close here, not with answers, but with a kind of peace. Déjà vu, in all its shades, reminds us that life is layered, that the mind is more intricate than we imagine, and that time itself is not always linear. There are folds, echoes, reverberations. There are stories we seem to have lived before, and feelings we seem to have felt without cause. And in these moments, whether déjà vu or déjà seni, we are reminded of the strangeness of being alive, the way each moment carries more than it seems, the way familiarity and mystery can walk hand in hand. So let yourself rest in that. Let yourself marvel at the subtle colors of the mind. And when the next flicker of déjà vu arrives, instead of brushing it aside, welcome it, like a small messenger from the depths of consciousness, reminding you that even in the ordinary, the extraordinary waits quietly, just beneath the surface. Psychodynamic perspectives, Freudian or subconscious explanations. There are moments in life when the present bends strangely inward, when what you see and feel seems to shimmer with the weight of having been lived before. This is déjà vu, the uncanny familiarity of a moment that should be new. Many people brush it off as a trick of the mind, a fleeting glitch. But others linger there, wondering if déjà vu is not merely an accident, but a whisper, a message from some deeper layer of ourselves. Tonight, I invite you to lean into that whisper, to stay with it until the end. Because if you do, you may find that déjà vu is not just about memory or the brain's circuitry. It may be about the unconscious, the shadowed territory beneath our waking thoughts. For centuries, psychodynamic thinkers, especially those in the Freudian tradition, have suggested that déjà vu is not a mistake, but a revelation, a fragment of the hidden mind breaking through the surface, just long enough for us to notice. Let us begin, as always, at the universal. All of us live with two selves. There is the self we know, the one that makes choices, that speaks, that plans. And then there is the other, the silent twin beneath the floorboards, the unconscious. It stores what we forget, what we suppress, what we cannot quite face. It is a library of unspoken fears, hidden desires, unresolved memories. Most of the time, this subterranean self remains quiet, shaping us from the shadows. But sometimes, just sometimes, it pushes through, like a root breaking the pavement above it. Déjà vu, in this light, might be one of those moments. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, lived in a world before neuroscience could map brain activity with machines. He worked instead with dreams, slips of the tongue, sudden feelings. To him, déjà vu was not an error of memory, but a resurfacing. Perhaps, Freud suggested, we experience déjà vu when a current situation reminds us, subconsciously, of something we have already lived, usually in childhood. But instead of remembering it directly, the mind disguises the resemblance as uncanny familiarity. In other words, what we feel as déjà vu could be the unconscious recognizing an echo, while the conscious mind struggles to keep up. Imagine walking into a stranger's home. You glance around and feel overwhelmed by déjà vu. You've never been here before, and yet it feels intimate. The wallpaper reminds you of something, the arrangement of furniture tugs at you, but you cannot place it. Freud might say, this is not magic, but memory. Perhaps the layout resembles your grandmother's house, or a room from your early years that you have long since forgotten. The conscious mind says, I have never been here. But the unconscious insists, I know this place. And in the gap between the two voices, familiarity without recognition, déjà vu is born. Here, in the middle of our journey, lies the key insight. From a psychodynamic perspective, déjà vu is the return of the repressed. It is the unconscious sending up flares, emotions, atmospheres, fragments of memory that the waking mind does not recognize. Déjà vu, then, is not about predicting the future. It is about the past breaking into the present, uninvited but insistent. Let us pause and reflect. Think of the unconscious as a vast attic filled with old boxes. Some are labeled and neat. Childhood birthdays, familiar songs, old school friends. But others are tucked away, dusty, unlabeled. We avoid them. We forget them. And yet, When a detail in the present resembles something in those boxes, the attic door creaks open. For a fleeting second, the present feels saturated with the past, but without clarity. This is déjà vu, the light under the attic door. It is poetic to think that even our forgotten moments live on, waiting for their chance to resurface. That déjà vu is not a glitch, but a reunion, with pieces of ourselves we didn't know were still there. Beyond Freud, later psychodynamic thinkers offered their own variations. Carl Jung, for example, would have seen déjà vu less as the return of repressed personal memory and more as a brush with the collective unconscious, the shared reservoir of human archetypes and inherited images. In his eyes, déjà vu might be less about childhood rooms and more about timeless symbols, the hero's journey, the mother's gaze, the archetype of the homecoming. Others, too, suggested that déjà vu might stem from wish fulfillment. A moment feels familiar because it aligns with an unspoken desire, a wish the unconscious has rehearsed countless times. When life briefly echoes this wish, the resonance feels like recognition. If this all feels abstract, let us ground it in ordinary life. Consider relationships. You meet someone new, and as they smile, you feel déjà vu. Not because you have met them before, but because their gestures remind you, unconsciously, of someone else, an old friend, a first love, perhaps even a parent. The unconscious recognizes the echo, but the conscious mind cannot pinpoint it. The result is a strange familiarity, an eerie intimacy with a stranger. Or consider travel. You arrive in a new city. The streets are different, the language foreign. Yet a corner cafe, a shadow in the alley, the sound of children playing. It strikes you as deeply familiar. Perhaps the colors remind your unconscious of places from your childhood. Perhaps the rhythm of the street echoes something buried. You cannot name it. You only feel it. That, too, is déjà vu. We find echoes of this interpretation across culture. In literature, déjà vu is often described not as a cognitive error, but as the soul recognizing something. In poetry, it becomes the return of longing, of memories that hovered just outside of reach. The French poet Charles Baudelaire once wrote of the recollection of the new, a paradoxical idea that captures this sense of unconscious recognition. Even in film, the psychodynamic thread appears. Think of scenes where characters walk through unfamiliar places but feel strangely at home. Directors often use this to signal buried memories, traumas, or destinies waiting to unfold. Déjà vu becomes a cinematic shorthand for the subconscious at work. And yet, let us not forget the other side. Science offers mechanical explanations for déjà vu, neural misfiring, memory overlaps, disruptions in temporal lobe processing. These are valuable insights. But to reduce déjà vu solely to biology misses the subjective richness of the experience. For the person who feels it, déjà vu is not simply a glitch. It is a profound reminder that the mind is layered, that the present is haunted by the past. So what can we take from this, as ordinary travelers of life? Perhaps the next time déjà vu comes, instead of dismissing it, we can pause, breathe, ask, what might my unconscious be recognizing? What echo is surfacing? Even if we cannot name it, even if it remains mysterious, there is value in listening. Because these fleeting moments remind us that we are not only what we remember, we are also what we forget, what we hide, what we carry in silence. In this way, déjà vu is an invitation to be curious about ourselves, to honor the unseen depths within us, to acknowledge that we are always more than what meets the eye. And so, we end where we began, with a whisper. Déjà vu, in the psychodynamic perspective, is the voice of the unconscious speaking through the cracks of the present. It is the past alive in the now, the hidden brushing against the visible. It is uncanny, yes, but also profoundly human. So when it next visits you, don't be afraid. Instead, welcome it. Let it remind you that you are layered, infinite, mysterious. That even in the smallest moment, the whole history of your inner world may be waiting, just beneath the surface, to be felt again. Cognitive theories, dual processing, familiarity, and recognition errors. There are moments in life when time bends softly against us. You are walking down a street you've never seen before, and yet your body whispers, I know this place. Or you are in the middle of a conversation, listening to the ordinary melody of words, when suddenly a quiet certainty strikes. This exact moment has happened before. It is fleeting. By the time you try to hold it, déjà vu is already gone, like a bird startled into flight, vanishing into the trees. And yet, its impression lingers. It leaves us wondering, what is this strange sensation of remembering something we have not lived? A glitch? A mystery? A secret? Tonight, I invite you to stay with that question, to settle into it with me, without rushing toward the answer. Because déjà vu, as modern cognitive theories suggest, is not just a curiosity, it is a window into how the mind works, into the delicate machinery of memory, recognition, and the subtle dance between feeling and knowing. If you stay with me until the end, I hope you'll come away not only with an understanding of dual processing, familiarity, and recognition errors, but also with a more tender appreciation for the fragile, fallible brilliance of your own mind. Let us begin not with science, but with something more universal. We live our lives in two ways at once. On one level, there is the conscious story we tell. I am here, I am doing this, I remember that. But beneath that narrative, there is a quieter rhythm. The body moves, the senses take in information, and the mind sorts it before we even notice. Like a theater production, what we experience on stage is only possible because of all the hidden workers behind the curtain. Déjà vu, in this light, may be one of those moments when the curtain slips, when we catch a glimpse of the backstage of our own cognition. Cognitive psychology offers us one of the most grounded and yet most fascinating explanations for déjà vu: dual processing. Think of memory as having two tracks, like parallel rails of a train line. One track handles familiarity, that warm, wordless sense of knowing we've seen something before. The other handles recollection, the conscious retrieval of details, where we were, what happened, why it matters. Most of the time, these two tracks run smoothly together. You see a friend's face, and you not only recognize them as familiar, but you also remember their name, your history together, the last time you spoke. But sometimes, the tracks slip out of sync. The familiarity signal fires. Yes, this is known, but the recollection signal fails to provide context. The result? A moment feels deeply familiar, but we cannot place it. That is déjà vu. This, here, is the heart of cognitive theories. Déjà vu arises when familiarity and recollection separate, when the feeling of knowing is triggered without the content of knowing. Imagine you are flipping through a photo album. You see a blurry picture of a landscape. The shapes, the colors, tug at you. You feel sure you have been there, but your memory cannot name the place, cannot pull the story attached to it. That tug without clarity, that is the same machinery at work in déjà vu. Or think of hearing a song in the distance, muffled, indistinct. Something in you lights up. I know this melody, but the title, the lyrics, the artist, all remain out of reach. That warm but incomplete recognition is the core of the phenomenon. Now, imagine that happening not with a photo or a song, but with your entire lived moment. That is the strange power of déjà vu. Psychologists also explore this through the lens of recognition errors. Our brains are constantly comparing the present to the past, checking for patterns, searching for familiarity. But like any system, it sometimes makes mistakes. A setting, a face, a smell. Something in the present might resemble something we once encountered, enough to trigger familiarity. But the resemblance is incomplete. The conscious mind, unable to locate the source, feels the mismatch as uncanny. It is like meeting a stranger who reminds you vaguely of a childhood friend. They do not look the same, but something in their posture, their tone, stirs the memory. Your mind insists on the echo, even as reason says, no, this person is new. Déjà vu lives in that tension between recognition and error. There is a beautiful fragility in this. Our memories, we like to believe, are sharp and faithful, like photographs stored in albums. But in truth, memory is more like watercolor, fluid, impressionistic, blending past and present together. Déjà vu reminds us of this softness. It reminds us that our sense of reality depends on imperfect systems, neural signals that can slip out of step, patterns that can misfire, feelings of knowing that sometimes come unmoored from facts. And yet, is that not what makes us human? That our lives are stitched not from flawless recordings, but from impressions, emotions, the delicate balancing of familiarity and forgetfulness? Consider how this plays out in daily life. When you are tired, stressed, or distracted, you might find déjà vu happening more often. This is because dual processing depends on careful timing. If the mind is fatigued, the signals may misalign. The familiarity track may surge forward before the recollection track can catch up. For a brief second, you feel at home in a moment that you logically know is new. Or consider travel again. In a new country, you walk through a market, hear the calls of vendors, smell spices in the air. The details are foreign, but the atmosphere reminds you, unconsciously, of something else, a market from your own city, a childhood fair, even a scene from a movie you once watched. The familiarity is genuine, but misplaced. Your brain signals recognition where it cannot truly retrieve, and so déjà vu blooms. Interestingly, some studies suggest that déjà vu might even serve a useful function. By signaling a mismatch between familiarity and recollection, it may be the mind's way of alerting us to a potential error. It is as though the brain is double-checking its work, saying, "This feels known, but the details don't align. Proceed carefully." Far from being just a glitch, déjà vu could be a subtle tool for cognitive monitoring, a little spark of self-awareness. History, too, has flirted with these ideas, even before science gave them names. In ancient writings, déjà vu was often described as a trick of memory, a confusion between dreams and reality, between imagination and experience. What modern psychology has added is not the recognition of error itself, but the elegant detail of how memory systems create the conditions for it. Philosophers once asked, "Can we ever trust memory?" Cognitive science gently answers, "Trust it, but lightly. Hold it as you would a delicate glass, precious, useful, but not unbreakable." So let us return to the image of the tracks. Familiarity on one side, recollection on the other. Most of the time, they glide in harmony. But every now and then, they separate. And in that moment of separation, we glimpse the machinery of our own minds. That glimpse is déjà vu. It is not prophecy, it is not magic, but it is no less wondrous for that. Perhaps the next time you feel it, you will smile. Instead of worrying, instead of reaching frantically for an explanation, you will let it wash over you. You will think, my mind is showing me its hidden gears. You will marvel that such a small misalignment can feel so profound, so mysterious. And you will remember that you, like all of us, are made not of certainty, but of echoes, not of perfect recollections, but of shifting impressions. Déjà vu, then, is a reminder of our humanity, intricate, fallible, layered. A gentle signal from the backstage of the mind, reminding us that memory is not a fixed archive, but a living, breathing process. So, the next time it happens, when you walk into a room, or hear a voice, or sit beneath the glow of an afternoon sun and think, "I have lived this before," do not rush to solve it. Do not fear it. Instead, pause. Feel the moment's texture. Appreciate the fragile elegance of your cognition. Because déjà vu is not just an error. It is a reminder that your mind is always working, always weaving together the familiar and the new, the known and the unknown. And in that weaving lies the poetry of being alive. Virtual reality and simulations, inducing déjà vu experimentally. Not in the science fiction sense of being trapped inside a computer program, but in the quieter way our experiences sometimes fold into each other, when a present moment echoes the past with uncanny precision. You stand in a hallway you have never walked down before, yet every corner feels rehearsed. You shake the hand of a stranger, and their smile feels pre-written, like a scene you once read in a book you've long forgotten. This is déjà vu, the brief, shimmering overlap of now and before. For most of history, it was treated as an uncatchable butterfly, a fleeting mystery that appeared unbidden and vanished before it could be studied. But in recent decades, science has found a new way to gently cup its hands around that butterfly, a way to invite déjà vu into the laboratory, not through chance or waiting, but by using something that itself feels dreamlike, artificial, and almost too real: virtual reality. Stay with me until the end, and together we'll explore not just how scientists have begun to experimentally induce déjà vu, but also what this reveals about the delicate machinery of memory, about the porous boundaries between the real and the simulated, and about the deeply human longing to understand the mysteries of our own perception. Let us begin, as always, with something universal. Every life is built on repetition. We brush our teeth in the same room each morning. We return to the same kitchen table. We pass familiar streets and faces on our daily routes. Repetition creates comfort, and within comfort, we find belonging. But once in a while, the mind betrays us. It takes something utterly new, a hotel lobby in a city we've never visited, a phrase we've never spoken, a sequence of events unfolding for the very first time, and whispers, "You have been here before." How could we study such a ghost of memory? How could science, which relies on repeatable experiments, capture a phenomenon that is by its very nature elusive, unpredictable, and private? This is where virtual reality enters the story. Virtual reality is, at heart, a kind of memory machine. Slip on a headset, and you are transported into worlds that do not exist, but feel as though they do. You can walk through a corridor that no architect has ever built. You can stand on the edge of a mountain that no climber has ever scaled. You can sit in a cafe that dissolves the moment you take the headset off. VR is not just a technology of entertainment. It is a technology of simulation. And in simulation, scientists realized, lies the power to manipulate familiarity itself. Because déjà vu thrives on resemblance. It arises when something in the present mimics something from the past. Virtual reality can be crafted to replicate just enough of an experience to trigger that uncanny echo. One of the most famous experiments in this field was as simple as it was brilliant. Psychologists created virtual environments, rooms, hallways, landscapes, each carefully designed. Some were unique. Others were subtly patterned after previous ones, sharing the same layout but draped in different visual details. A winding corridor in one simulation might reappear in another as a forest path, the geometry unchanged though the surface was entirely new. When participants entered these familiar yet different spaces, many reported feeling déjà vu. The environment was not one they had consciously encountered before, but the hidden structural resemblance stirred a silent recognition. For the first time, déjà vu could be conjured at will. No longer a mystery darting in and out of everyday life. It became something reproducible, testable, observable. Here, at the midpoint, lies the heart of the insight. Déjà vu is not magic. It is not evidence of past lives or hidden prophecies. It is the mind's response to subtle familiarity without context. Virtual reality reveals this by showing us how easily recognition can be tricked, not through deception, but through design. The experiment proved that when the brain detects similarity in structure, even without recalling the source, it produces that haunting sensation of already lived. In essence, déjà vu can be engineered. And yet, even with this explanation, the poetry of it remains. Because what is déjà vu, if not a reminder that our sense of reality is fragile, that what feels utterly unique might secretly echo something half-forgotten? That even in a world we trust to be linear and unrepeatable, patterns hum beneath the surface, waiting to be recognized? Let us widen the lens now. The attempt to simulate déjà vu in a lab is more than a scientific curiosity. It reflects something deeper in human culture, our age-old fascination with the idea that reality itself might be a simulation. From Plato's allegory of the cave, to Buddhist notions of Maya, the illusion of the world, to modern films like The Matrix, humanity has long asked whether what we experience is authentic or whether it is a projection, a pattern, a shadow on the wall. Déjà vu sits precisely at that threshold. It feels like a glitch, a crack in the fabric of reality, a moment when the code repeats itself. Little wonder that virtual reality, with its carefully coded illusions, became the perfect tool for exploring it. Think of your own experiences in digital spaces. Have you ever played a video game, walked through a rendered city, and felt the odd sense that the architecture was familiar? That turning a corner, even in a fictional world, reminded you of some street in your real life? Virtual reality magnifies this effect. It builds worlds from resemblance. The tree in one simulation may not be the same as the tree in another, but the branching pattern, the spacing, the rhythm of the landscape calls something forward from memory. And in those echoes, déjà vu lives. Daily life offers its own parallels. Imagine visiting a new friend's home for the first time, yet their living room feels like one you've seen before. Not because you've been there, but because the arrangement of furniture, sofa against the window, table in the corner, bookshelf along the wall, matches something in your own past. The details are different, but the structure is the same. This is exactly what virtual reality experiments capture, distilled into controlled environments, the eerie power of resemblance without recollection. But let us not lose sight of the more philosophical current running beneath all of this. If déjà vu can be induced by simulation, what does that say about memory itself? That it is not a perfect archive, but a pattern recognition system. That it can be nudged, triggered, or confused by design. That familiarity does not always mean truth. And perhaps, most beautifully, that the mind is not bound to certainty. It is willing to be moved by echoes, by shadows, by almosts. As we drift toward a close, let us circle back to where we began. The fleeting sensation of déjà vu often leaves us unsettled, but if we see it through the lens of virtual reality and cognitive science, it becomes less a ghost and more a glimpse of the mind's inner artistry. It is the brain's attempt to make sense of patterns, to weave the new and the old together into a seamless story. Virtual reality has allowed us to peer into that weaving. It has shown us that déjà vu is not an otherworldly prophecy, but a very human phenomenon, grounded in recognition, structure, and memory's fragile design. And yet, knowing this does not erase the wonder. If anything, it deepens it, because how extraordinary it is that even in a laboratory, even in a headset, even in a simulated hallway made of pixels, the mind can be moved into mystery. So, the next time you feel déjà vu, whether in a real street or a digital one, pause. Let the sensation settle. Remember that you are experiencing the quiet interplay between memory and moment, between pattern and presence. And whether the world is a simulation or not, whether the moment is an echo or an original, remember this. The feeling itself is a gift. A reminder that life, whether lived or simulated, is always richer than certainty. Always layered, always echoing, always unfolding. Literature and art, representation of déjà vu in creative works. There are certain feelings that resist language. Certain flickers of experience that appear, shimmer for a moment, and vanish before we can hold them still. And yet, for as long as humans have written stories, painted canvases, carved stone, and composed music, we have tried to capture them anyway. Déjà vu is one of those fleeting, uncatchable things. It arrives softly, without warning, like a half-remembered dream slipping into the light of day. You pause, uncertain whether you are awake or still drifting in memory. And just as quickly as it comes, it recedes, leaving only the trace of mystery behind. No one knows exactly why it happens or what it means, but writers, artists, and dreamers through the centuries have taken this sensation and turned it into something more, a symbol, a metaphor, a creative mirror of the way life repeats itself in hidden patterns. Tonight, I'd like to take you on a gentle walk through that creative landscape. Together, we'll trace how déjà vu has been represented in literature and art, not just as a scientific curiosity, but as a profound human metaphor for memory, fate, and the strange repetitions of our lives. Stay with me until the end, because woven in these stories is not only the echo of déjà vu, but also the deeper recognition that art itself is déjà vu, a way of revisiting and reshaping the familiar until it feels both new and eternal. Let us begin with a universal reflection. Think of how many times life seems to echo itself. You meet a new person, but something about their laughter reminds you of a childhood friend. You stand in a new city, but the evening light falls against the rooftops in exactly the way it once did back home. Our days are never entirely original. They are stitched from threads we have worn before. And literature, perhaps more than any other human creation, is a reflection of that truth. Every story carries echoes of other stories. Every poem is both a fresh breath and a memory of earlier voices. So it makes sense that déjà vu, the haunting feeling of already seen, has been a favorite subject for poets, novelists, and painters across centuries. They understood, long before psychologists named it, that this phenomenon touches something essential about art, the tension between the familiar and the new. If we step into the world of literature first, we find déjà vu lingering in many corners. The French novelist Charles Baudelaire once described life itself as a forest of symbols. Within that forest, déjà vu appears like a clearing, a moment when we realize we've walked this path before, though we cannot recall when. In fact, the French term itself, déjà vu, was born from this cultural tendency towards symbolism, toward giving names to experiences that feel otherwise unspeakable. Writers often use déjà vu to suggest fate, predestination, or the cyclical nature of time. Think of it as a narrative device. When a character experiences déjà vu, the author signals that something deeper is at work. The moment is not random. It is a thread in a larger tapestry, hinting that events are guided by unseen patterns. In Dostoevsky's novels, for instance, characters often stumble into sensations of repetition. The déjà vu they feel is rarely just a quirk of memory. It is charged with meaning, as though destiny itself were whispering in their ear. A conversation already heard, a gesture already made. These moments underline the sense that lives are guided by unconscious repetition, by forces larger than individual will. Meanwhile, in modernist literature, déjà vu became a way to explore the instability of memory and identity. Writers like Proust leaned into the strange overlaps between past and present. Though Proust's most famous example involves the Madeleine, a cookie dipped in tea that suddenly unravels years of memory, it is spiritually close to déjà vu. Both are reminders that the mind does not live neatly in one time, but constantly slips between echoes of the past and impressions of the present. In the middle of this reflection lies our central insight. Art and literature love déjà vu because they are déjà vu. Think about it. When we read a story, we are entering a place we've never been, yet one that feels strangely familiar. Archetypes, rhythms, cadences, they echo across centuries. The hero's journey in Homer is not so different from the hero's journey in Star Wars. The unrequited love in a medieval poem is not so different from the songs we hum today. Every creative work carries within it the faint pulse of what has been seen before. And so, when artists paint, when musicians compose, when writers describe the uncanny sensation of déjà vu, they are really holding up a mirror to the very act of creation. The new work already remembers the old. The new page already carries the fingerprints of past pages. Let us wander further into visual art. Painters have long tried to capture the dreamlike essence of déjà vu, not in words, but in images. Think of the surrealists, like Salvador Dali or René Magritte, who filled their canvases with scenes that felt both ordinary and strange. A pipe that is not a pipe. A landscape that seems familiar, but dissolves upon closer look. These are not literal depictions of déjà vu, but they embody its logic, the coexistence of the known and the unknown, the comforting and the disorienting. Other painters used repetition to mimic the sensation. Andy Warhol's multiple images of Marilyn Monroe or Campbell's soup cans are, in their own way, visual déjà vu. At first glance, the images are identical. But look again, and each repetition has slight variations, like memories recalled imperfectly, never quite the same twice. In music, too, the idea appears. Composers often play with motifs, small fragments of melody that return throughout a piece. Sometimes the return is comforting, like meeting an old friend. Other times it is unsettling, like hearing an echo you cannot place. In both cases, the effect is unmistakably déjà vu, the haunting recognition of something familiar in a new moment. If we return to daily life, we see why this motif resonates so deeply. Think of standing in a museum, staring at a painting, and feeling as though you've been there before. Or reading a passage in a book and realizing it describes not just a character's life, but your own, in words you had not yet found. This is where art and déjà vu merge. Both give us the feeling of touching something eternal, something larger than one moment in time. But there is another layer still. Artists do not only represent déjà vu, they use it. In creative works, déjà vu can act as a narrative key. It can signal to the reader that something is hidden, that the story loops back on itself. Think of films like Groundhog Day, where repetition becomes both comedy and philosophy. Think of Christopher Nolan's Inception, where dreams fold into dreams and the sensation of familiarity becomes a central puzzle. In these stories, déjà vu is not just decoration. It is the mechanism by which we begin to ask questions about reality, memory, and selfhood. And so, as we begin to close, let us step back and see the larger pattern. Why has déjà vu been so alluring to poets, painters, and storytellers? Because it embodies the very thing art tries to do, to take what is fleeting and give it form, to catch the butterfly before it disappears, to hold the shimmer just long enough for others to see. Déjà vu, in this sense, is not an enemy of art, it is its ally. It reminds us that every act of creation is a return. Every new work echoes something already lived, already dreamed, already painted. And yet, in the echo, it becomes new again. So the next time you feel déjà vu, whether in a room you've never been in, or in a line of poetry that feels written just for you, pause. Recognize that you are not only experiencing a trick of memory, but also touching the same mystery that artists across centuries have tried to express. The mystery of repetition. The mystery of memory. The mystery of how something can be both known and unknown at once. And perhaps, in that pause, you will see what they saw. That life itself is a canvas of déjà vu. That every moment is both new and remembered. That we are, all of us, walking through a story that has been told before and will be told again, endlessly, beautifully, mysteriously.